ahead and convene the meeting at 7:01 on July 11th. Roll call, please, or call to order, please. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Trumpman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sardella.
Here.
Commissioner Bilt.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
All rise for the
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We're going to go ahead and start tonight with some presentations. The first one will be by our Chief of Police, Chief Walschlager. I'm sorry, Chief, could you wait one moment second, please? I'm sorry, I was not aware of it. There were other Marines from Mississippi you're referring to? Okay. There were 19 Marines killed in Mississippi. There's been a request for a moment of silence. I think we can do that. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Chief?
At the last meeting, when I presented to you, I told you that we were right around the corner from hiring 2 new officers, and I just wanted to get back to you, let you know that we did do that. We completed it. We hired a full-time officer, Mike Rigo, and a reserve officer, Rowena Weir. I did have them scheduled to be here today, but they are out dealing with a call right now, so Rowena comes to us. She was originally hired by FHP, and then as opposed to spending time up in Tallahassee, she came down and worked at Miami-Dade rail service. So basically any type of transit down there, she is a rail officer. Officer Rigo comes to us from Village Belle Portal. He has over 16 years of experience with him. He is bicycle certified. He is FITW, which is Firearms Instructor certified. He is a certified instructor, a certified field training officer. So we really lucked out in that pickup.
Great. Thank you.
The next slide that I have for you guys is traffic enforcement. Obviously, it's been a huge issue for us, and we've seen the decline of tickets, the decline of seeing officers out on the road, traffic stops. So what I did was I took a breakdown of the first 6 months of 2016 and compared it to where we're at in the first 6 months of 2017. Traffic stops went from 686 in 2016. We're now at 861. Total tickets for 2016 was 394. We're now at 588. Just as a little note to you guys, last year's total number of tickets was 585. So we have already exceeded what we completed for the entire year of last year in 6 months.
Fantastic.
This is just a little bit of a breakdown of what the 6 months have been. I was not able to get what the breakdown was of the first 6 months of last year because that was not the way that the stats were kept at that time. I tried to go back, tried to go over, didn't quite work out.
Nick,
Yes, sir.
are it speeding violations moving violations?
They are, however, I like to take them out just so that everyone is aware that so that they are aware of them. Non-moving violations are covered in everything, tags, lights, tints, anything like that. Moving is, yes, it is speeding violations, stop signs, change of lanes, anything like that. However, those speeding violations are separate from that number. So if you add them together, yes, there is a higher moving violation total. But I just wanted you to be aware that there are separate categories that we have lumped them into for speeding so that everyone can be aware of that. And then criminal violations, it's anything from driving while your license is suspended, never having a driver's license, anything of that nature is categorized separately. It could actually be enacted as a criminal arrest and taken to jail A lot of times it's weighed at, when you're out on scene, whether or not it warrants it, number one, how their license is suspended, you know, just the totality of the circumstances. It may be easier just to write the ticket as opposed to transport them to jail. As long as you're gaining that compliance, that's what we're going for. The arrests so far, I just have a little breakdown. We have been experiencing, out of the ordinary, a larger number of domestic violence incidents. We have 5 aggravated batteries, all domestic related. There's certain laws that we can't go into as far as domestic situations. I just want you to be aware of it when you see in the UCRs, when it comes out as far as aggravated batteries, all of them are the people know each other. Everything is pretty self-explanatory. Stolen vehicles, grand theft, anything over $300 falls into that category. Criminal mischief, anything from graffiti to keying somebody's car. The 6 traffic arrests that you see at the bottom, those are the situations like those 61 tickets. These 6 actually warranted going to jail. Whether it was a habitual driving offender, 27 suspensions on the license, clearly a ticket, and show up on this date to court is not working out.
For the stolen vehicles, can you expound a little bit on those? Were the keys left in? Were there?
I was going to get into that
Okay.
a little bit at the end, but for sure.
Chief, I have a question. These are not necessarily all from this year, these could be from,
I'm sorry, Chuck, could you mind,
is that correct?
These arrests,
Mr. Ross, could you mind waiting for public comments, please? Thank you.
the arrests can be covered as far as anything that our detective bureau is going into, which is going to be the next slide that we have coming up. Our detective bureau, which again has been, we took it from a paid position to being covered solely by reserves, and every man hour that they put into it is free of charge for us. These are the arrests that have come out of that. Now, in these may be cases from 2016. I believe one of the stolen vehicles was from 2016. 2 of the burglaries, whether it takes a while for the fingerprints to come back, DNA, anything of that nature, it's not exactly easy to get it within the same year. Miami-Dade County is so inundated and backed up that we may fall by the wayside. So that's where we're at with that. I decided to keep it, short, quick, to the point tonight for you guys. Just my final thoughts before we go. Lock your doors, whether it's to your house or to your car. Out of all of the stolen vehicles we've had, both last year and this year, all except one was because the vehicle's keys were left inside the vehicle and with the car doors open. That is a problem. I appreciate, the thought that we are out there and you guys feel that safe. Dade County is a dangerous place. People will victimize you if you allow them. Do not make it too easy for them. A lot of the crimes are crimes of opportunity. Don't park on the medians. The last meeting that I spoke to you guys, I told you where I was going to go forward with that as far as the orange stickers. I ordered 200 orange stickers. I thought that was going to more than send the message. We have already put in another order for orange stickers. On the upside, we are not seeing the same violators. Maybe 1 or 2 here and there, but the people that have spent 45 minutes scraping their window got the message and they're not parking on it anymore. Again, we created an Excel spreadsheet to where the officers are able to pull it up in their car. They're going to type in the tag number or the VIN number or anything that they can get on the vehicle to see whether or not this car has been observed before, if it got an orange sticker before, if it got a ticket before, and pretty much take action from there. So if you're going to have somebody who, I've already put a sticker on this car 3 times, I'm going to write you a ticket now because apparently the sticker's just not working out. The tickets, I know it came into question a couple of times, are Miami-Dade County not traffic citations. They're actually tickets that are specifically issued for parking violations. So they are only put on by lifting up the windshield wiper and placing it on the window. So if a homeowner has come out and removed it because it's a quick thing to do, it's not 45 minutes, there's a chance that that car has already been cited. We do appreciate you calling to let us know anyway. Please continue to do that, but just be aware that if an officer drives up, checks the tag, you may not see him get out and issue a ticket if he already did 15 minutes ago. So just so everybody's aware and on the same page. Uniform Crime Report, the UCRs, are due now. This is the program that is reported to FDLE for every municipality, and then it is reported to the FBI from FDLE. They break it down every 6 months, so I am currently going through it with them up until June. As soon as I get those numbers out, we'll have them out for you guys, but I was not able to do that yet because it took a while for the web portal to actually open, and then you have to confer with FDLE, make sure everything is on the level, make sure everything is adding up. And so I'm hoping to have those to you the next time that we meet, but I don't want to make any promises as of right now. Because if something goes wrong with the system and I don't have them, I don't want to come up empty-handed. Continuing recruitment and hiring. We are actively recruiting. I am actually in the process of doing a background on an individual who we are going to sponsor through the academy. It's going to be no money to us as far as paying him while he's in the academy, or no money that we are going to shell out for the academy. So it's basically putting our name and patch on one of the officers, and he will sign a 1-year to 2-year commitment to us getting out of it to go through the FTO program. Now, yeah, that is a little bit thinking ahead as far as we can't even touch him for 6 months. However, we always have to have a plan. You know, it's whatever we're dealing with is great now, but we also need to be prepared for what's coming up. We're exhausting a lot of our, backdoor channels with other agencies, with the colleges, anyone that we can lure here. We're trying to. It's not the easiest sell. As far as salary, I'm not going to lie to you on that. That is a big thing with them. But as far as reserves, we have pretty much a open door. Give us your application and we'll take a look at it. Now, we're definitely not going to sacrifice quality for quantity like we've done in the past. But again, if you're green, you're right out of the academy and someone's not picking you up for experience, we'll see whether or not it's worth it to us to train you. And again, we'll have you sign that commitment to us. If we train you, we're not going to put X amount of man hours into it, and then you just abandon us because something else comes along. That's pretty much all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions?
Could we scroll through these again, because they weren't part of our packet, so I wasn't really focusing on looking around, if you don't mind. Great. Chief, do you anticipate putting this on the website for residents to be able to look at your mid-year report?
I can get with the clerk and we can get it up on the website, absolutely.
And if anybody wants it individually, just let me know and I can forward it to you.
I just think it's a good source of information for our residents to have. So as any way that we can get the word out there through Crime Watch or on the website or both, I think that would be very beneficial for our residents.
It might be nice to also blast it out.
What?
E-blast it out
Oh,
to the residents.
okay.
So most of this data deals with an actual citation or an arrest made, but we don't have much by way of vehicle break-ins currently occurring.
No, that is what I'm compiling for the UCRs. And again, as soon as I get all of that data put together, because they want it coded a certain way, I'll be able to put it out to you for everyone to see that way. Because if I'm going to do it this way and then they decide that they're going to change up the system and I have to redo it, it's basically wasted 2 weeks of a process So as soon as I can get everything on their style, then I can get it out to you guys.
Okay, so this, I mean, it's historic data, and it's nice to see the comparison last year to this year on the citations. I worry a little bit how that's going to translate to overtime or court time, but we'll have to, you know, cross that bridge when we get to those numbers. But the other thing that concerns me is criminal activity currently occurring, and how do we get that information out to people? So, I mean, it's a great job, and I'm glad that you're reporting this to us and bringing us up to date. There's two new recruits who are now on the street with us already. That's really good news. But I know I used to get information about vehicle break-ins or things that occur currently, and that sort of raised awareness for people to keep their eyes open and report things occurring currently. But I don't see a lot of that information coming out now. So are we doing something about that, Chief?
I will be speaking to our detective about it. And again, it's going to come through email blasts. It's going to come from the website, anything that they can do to get the message out.
Are we going to use Crime Watch going forward? Because we have historically used Crime Watch to get information like that out. And as far as I know, actually I can recall a couple of times that when that news hit someone in the Crime Watch network, they came forward and said, oh yeah, I have cameras in front of my house. I can give you some information. And all of those things were, I think, helpful tips for the investigator in solving a crime.
I mean, I'm open to using every avenue possible to us. I'm not going to hamstring it and say that it's only going to come from one source, but as many people as we can reach, I think that's the best tool. So if it's multiple people, that's great. If it's one source, then that's up to the commission to decide. But it's whatever can reach the most ears, the most eyes, get the most impact.
I think it's also important to get information out in a timely fashion, rather than at a commission meeting at the beginning of the month. And it's your police department. You run it how you think is the right way to run it. But it has been an invaluable tool to have people come forward and give information to the police when there's an active investigation going on.
Go ahead. I think the only concern I have, I think we should be, there's no problem with using Crime Watch, but I think that has to be up to the chief to decide what is appropriate to send out and not, depending on what his needs are. I don't think we need to make a blanket statement that every single crime that gets committed gets reported to Crime Watch, because that's not how it's done. I think we had a discussion on this last commission meeting. Crime Watch has specific roles which are not necessarily, they're not the spokespersons for the police. At the same time, I think everybody in this community is accustomed to having, if there's a rash of crimes, and I don't think you're opposed to this, to using all the resources available to you to get that information out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just, I mean, we have gone through this Crime Watch network for a good 5 or 6 years now. There are things that are not reported. If there's a domestic incident, or if there's something that is extremely sensitive, or even if there's something just between neighbors, that doesn't get blasted out to the community. But events that can be recurring, that we want, where we want to raise awareness, and if people out in the community have information that they can bring to the police to help solve a crime, those are really invaluable tools for the police. Every chief that we've had before thought it was. I thought you felt that way also.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that if it takes maybe a resolution of the commission to say that we support Crime Watch as an integral part of our community policing, as an integral part of protecting the community, maybe that's what we need to do, is a resolution.
I don't personally see that necessary. I think the police have worked hand in hand with Crime Watch for many, many years. I don't see that changing. I don't think we need a resolution for that. I think this is up to the chief to run his department how he sees fit. Are there any other commissioners have comments?
I guess my thought is, as we discussed it,
Commissioner Bilt.
as we've discussed at other meetings, the police department comes under our village manager. So it's not us, it's not up to us to decide. It's up to the village manager and the police chief to decide.
That's true.
John, am I correct?
Yeah, that's an operational,
Right.
Christian's in charge of the police department.
So, absolutely, I think that the police should work with Crime Watch. I think that crime events are, it's really important to get them out to the public in a timely manner. I think that benefits both the residents and the police in solving crimes. So going forward, I think we absolutely will make sure that we are getting that information out.
Use multiple sites if you can, e-blast as well as Crime Watch, just as many, so we can conference as many people as possible.
Oh, absolutely, we want to reach as many people as possible, certainly that.
Okay.
Okay,
Move it-
just so that we're
We
clear.
have a really long agenda, Commissioner Ross, so if you could just wrap it up, please.
Just so that we're clear, Crime Watch is not associated with the village government in any way. It's a separate, independent agency affiliated with Miami-Dade County, so they are autonomous from the village. And I think that it's important to support in our community because it's been such an effective way of getting information out to the residents. I'm sure we'll talk about it some more.
Thank you so much. Are there any deletions or withdrawals from the agenda? And I know the clerk, you had mentioned something.
Yes, Mayor. One of the, it's not really an addition, it's just moving up an item, and it would be 11A. It's going to be moved up to when our village manager goes ahead and does his report.
Okay. Anybody else? No?
Yes?
Yes? Sorry.
Yes. At the last meeting, we talked about having a goal-setting or strategic plan session, and it was, the item was in the draft agenda that we got earlier, maybe last week, but when the final agenda came out, it was removed. I suspect materials weren't ready for it, but as we are getting into budget season, I think it's important that we do have some goal setting and we have some strategic, maybe not strategic planning. We probably don't have time right now to do strategic planning for the budget, but certainly I think that the commission should express its priorities so that the administration can align the budget with the current commission's thinking going forward. So I'd like an item on the agenda.
Yeah,
about
I
that.
actually postponed that item for the request to put it towards the budget merely because this particular agenda was very packed, and I felt it went with the budget, so since it was listed as my item, I deferred it to August meeting. It was at the request of, after conversations with the village manager, as to there was only so much we could pack in here tonight, and we didn't want to fall short of doing that appropriately and give it the time it actually deserves.
I'd like to, just for consideration, and it might reveal other things as the meeting goes forward, perhaps we want to think about having a special meeting for that, rather than, I mean, next month's meeting is going to be packed as well. So just consideration, and we'll talk about it some more.
Okay, thank you. We can go ahead and open up to public comments. But just as, what? Oh, this is twice I've done this to you. I apologize immensely here. Manager's report.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'll open up with the CAFR. We finished the 2015 CAFR, as everyone knows. That's our audit, and we'll be beginning on the 2016 CAFR hopefully soon. As I, are you sorry.
Better? Thank you. So we'll be beginning on the 2016 CAFR soon. One of the things that we would like to do is actually go to an RFP and find a new audit company for that. There's a number of different reasons for that, and I would like the commission's support on that. Do you guys have any objections to moving forward with a new auditor?
You would take a consensus. Are there any objections to moving forward with an RFP? No. No? Commissioner Ross?
I think we should do it as expeditiously as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. So.
We will, then Commission's authorizing then to send a notice of termination to GLSC, consistent with the contract.
Correct.
And they have some outstanding bills. They also have some payments that we disagree with, and in order to move this thing forward, we would probably just terminate it as is now and pay nothing moving forward from last year's.
Is there a consensus to do so?
I believe that since we approved the contract with GLSC through a resolution, we probably should terminate it through a resolution as well.
Or at least through a motion, but I can do a draft adopt resolution just as easy, but I would ask for a motion or,
All right, do we have a consensus to have a draft and adopt motion to do so?
so moved by,
Is there a motion to do so?
you move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
By to do so, we're saying terminate GS and continue and proceed with an RFP.
Yes.
Terminate, proceed with the RP, and walk away from each other without further payment either way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and jump on that RFP then and get that moving forward as quickly as possible so that we can get that CAFR done. Finance, we'll have a presentation from Beatrice, our finance director, momentarily. One other thing that I would like to bring to your attention is we do receive a proposal from another bank. We've been using City National for quite some time, and we just did a comparison, had this other bank come in. It's Florida Community Bank. It's another small community bank like City National, and they gave us a comparison of some of the things that the services that we're receiving from City National currently. One of the things, for instance, is the annual interest revenue that we're currently getting from City National is $348 a year. FCB estimates they could get us $11,000 a year, so it'd be an increase of $10,650 a year in interest alone on the money that is sitting in a bank. So I think that in and of itself makes it beneficial. Additionally, they'd be willing to finance or refinance our $350,000 note that we have. It would be a better interest rate. We'd have a semi-annual payment that would increase by about $2,000 a year, but the overall savings and total interest paid would be approximately $37,350. So I think these are some things that we can look forward to moving forward with if we decide to go with another bank. Would you guys like to go to an RFP, or would you prefer that we go ahead and move forward with this?
Well, you would normally go for an RFP, but if you have the ability to waive it, this is first time.
Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
I
moving
sort of
forward.
sprang this forward on John.
On this, so we have no obligations under any contracts with the current bank, as I'm aware of, so we could unwind it. The question is, if they would bid on an RFP under those same terms, then you, unless there's a timing issue, then you wouldn't lose, and maybe you'd get something better. Or if managers looked into this and feels this is the best deal you're going to get, you do have the option to waive it if it's in the best interest and the uniqueness of banking. You could make that decision.
And I realize I just sprang this on you guys all at once here tonight, so if you want to bring it back, or want me to bring it back, get you some more information and bring it back to the next commission meeting, I'm happy to do that. And so,
Commissioner Sodelo. I'm Vice Mayor.
Yep, Manager Manners, I think I would need more information, especially about the interest rate that this new bank is offering, whether it's fixed, information like that, to make a decision whether or not this would be the best choice or whether or not we should move forward with an RFP. So if we could get more information, that
I'd
would
be
be
delighted to do that, absolutely.
If the manager's willing to, he could seek out other banks and get their interest by phone calls, just have that information.
Yeah,
for
and
you.
not necessarily do a formal RFP process, but just get a few bases for comparison here.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay. All right, then we'll move forward in that way. Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments to make on that, as I'm the fifth commissioner here. We're talking about moving $2.5–3 million of money, and I'm not very comfortable doing it just based on a couple of information points. I wish that we had this present to us in a more complete manner, and feel free to send us information by email in advance of a meeting. I don't think it's fair to ask us to make a decision like that on the fly at this moment. I believe that our relationship with City National Bank was established with a resolution before, so we probably should do something of the same level when that comes about again. And we actually do have contractual relationships with City National Bank because they hold the mortgage, or they advance the loan proceeds to complete the project. We also have some pledge revenue to them, and we'll have to formally terminate those relationships in some fashion. So I would like to know what other cities are using this bank, if that's the one that we're going to go forward with, and just like the complete package about it. Thank you.
Okay.
The rest of finance, give it to a
Beatrice will talk about some more on finance in just a few minutes. Public Works staff have been working around the village, doing the regular maintenance, mowing medians, that sort of thing. They're preparing to build the enclosures at Village Hall and the Rec Center for the garbage cans. That'll be coming up. They've had some large trees and tree trimming that they did last week as well. There were some trees that were damaged and were unsafe. So our good old Public Works guys have taken care of those for us. And then Parks and Rec. I'm pleased to announce that we have Issa Thornell coming back as our new Parks and Rec manager. Issa will be rejoining us on July 31st, and so we're excited about that and to start getting that department up and running again and moving forward. And so he's very happy to be coming back. He feels as if he's coming home, and so that's all good. Then Code Officer Pinero issued 48 administrative citations and 83 courtesy notices for the month of June. She's continuing to work on this. We're working to clean up that department. Administratively, the department is very behind, and we've been quite fortunate to have a consummate volunteer who is working overtime these days to get us straightened out on the administrative side with that. Additionally, I've asked Skip Marjoram, who is a code instructor at FAU, as well as the code supervisor for Hollywood, Florida, to come and speak with us about streamlining our processes, making sure we have all the forms, that we're doing everything by the book, and trying to make our code department more productive and move that forward as well. And so, in the building department, our longtime building official, Sal Neese, has retired, and he let me know that last week. And so we will be looking forward to getting a new building official, probably within the next few weeks. I think we'll probably
need to go to RFP on that.
It went off again.
I mean, batteries.
Sorry. And so we need to go to RFP on that, but I will be communicating with the commissioners about that and going forward so that we can find, what we need to do there exactly and make sure that it's done appropriately. And that's really the gist of it overall. And if you have any questions?
Any questions?
No? Thank you.
Nope. Okay. Is Beatrice? We do that after, no, hold on.
We were going to go over
Yeah,
the trash information.
Oh, correct.
The trash issues?
Do you want to go ahead and do that? Let's get you a different mic.
He was right here.
Go ahead and talk about sanitation. Is Kenny here? There you are. That's okay. I asked Kenny Rivera from Waste Pro to come in and just provide us with some options on what we can do to keep the village cleaner, how Waste Pro can help us, whether it's changing days or what. And so wanted to get his feedback on this, see what Waste Pro can do for us, and let the commission decide how they'd like to move forward and help give us direction on that.
Good evening, Ken Rivera, representing Waste Pro. Before I get started, I happen to be listening to the chief's comment and the interaction regarding the Crime Watch scenario. And I do want to put on the record that, Waste Pro is involved in what we call waste protection in various cities in our footprint. And basically what that is all of our trucks currently have cameras that are constantly recording as they're, working through the neighborhood. Outside of the residents and the police staff, our crews are in every single street in every part of the city every single time. And one of the things why this works, because we have the same consistency in terms of individuals out in the street working in the city. So they know the nuances of what's happening. They know what looks strange. They can identify what doesn't look right in the community. So, after the chief spoke and, I talked with him, and we're willing to offer that to the city as a partnership to begin talks into how do we incorporate our waste protection program at no cost to the city, of course, to the city. We do it in Miramar. We do it in North Lauderdale. Our technology is used in Pembroke Pines, the city of Hollywood. So we do it in a lot of the and also in Port St. Lucie, which was our first city. And we do it a lot, and basically, just to give a real quick overview, there's a very, very brief training, from the chief to our staff, and basically, we're not out there stopping the crime. We're there just to report what we believe, or the guys believe to be an unusual situation, a different car, or a car parked in a weird way with somebody in it. And they just have a number directly to, not a 911 number, but some number in the city that they would report it to. And then it goes, and the city takes it from there. The other part of it, which is, I think, the better part is, if there's some incident that occurred in the city during the day, and it happened on one of the days that, our trucks are in the area, the chief or police staff, detective can call us and say, hey, can you check on your truck on this street, between this time and that time, to see what they've picked up, as they were working, working in the area. And 99.9% of the time, they see something that, or the cameras pick up something that helps in some sort of an investigation on a specific incident. We constantly get requests from everywhere, in Broward and in Pembroke Pines. Hey, I need a snippet of what you have, seen, and we've got a report of a stolen car, and they saw it over here. So a lot of different things that we can do with the information. So I'm here, and this was just happened to hear it, and it works. This is a very tight-knit community, so it works well in these type of communities. And so we're here. I'm here to offer it and say, looking forward to the discussions and see how we can incorporate that part of our service to the city, of Biscayne Park. So just wanted to throw that out to you guys.
Thank you very much.
So, we've had discussions regarding, what can we do for the city in terms of providing the service and trying to remove the bulk, primarily the bulk, out of the streets in a much quicker fashion, as it relates to the way it's done today. But we got to step back a minute and remember, how this whole thing occurred. When the city staff, and please correct me as I go along in terms of what the operations were back then, but when the city staff was doing it, they had a crew for bulk, they had a crew for garbage, and those trucks either ran 4 days a week, for the bulk, and another 4 days a week for trash, and then obviously the recycling pickup. And same group of guys every single day for a very long time. Fast forward to us, and we've, we came on board, and, one of the first difficulties is to find the right people to do the job consistently, and the right people to consistently come to the city to, on an everyday basis. We're at the point right now where we do service on Mondays, we do service on Tuesdays, we do service on Wednesdays only for the few of the, illegal piles that are set out there. Then we come back Friday to do the recycling and the sanitation service. And in all those days, which Monday, that's 4 days, and in all those days, it's the same crew that does it every single day in and day out. The biggest challenge is how do we get everything, and I believe when we started, I think we had to do bulk on Wednesdays. And then, you know, Wednesday's typically not or Tuesdays, okay.
It was Tuesday
Yeah.
for
So-
bulk and
right.
sanitation, and then Friday for recycle and
Correct.
sanitation.
So, and then usually Tuesday, you know, people have to, you know, they do their stuff on the weekends, and they has to, you know, wait. So they said, well, we move it to Monday so they can come off the street. So on Monday, when we have our crews in here, it's Monday is the bulk. So it's the 2 trucks, the 3 trucks, and there are the same exact guys that come in on a Tuesday and do the sanitation. And then on Friday, it's the same crews that do the garbage and the recycling. So we're trying to keep the consistency of the drivers in the city because they know it. It's very difficult to hire somebody to come in and say, hey, today you're going to work in Biscayne Park, tomorrow you're going to work here, over there. So, you know, we're trying to avoid that at all cost. To do it all in one day is going to, unfortunately, we're going to have to add another truck. And sometimes I keep hearing this thing about the claw truck, you know, picking up with the claw truck. You know, some people like it, some people don't like it. You know, we're you know, it's back and forth. You know, because all the yard waste is getting picked up, all the bulks are getting picked up, except, like, for example, this past Monday, we had 5 illegal piles that we reported saying, hey, these are the ones that are going to be left for code to investigate, and then we'll be here Wednesday to pick up, you know, pick them up. But if you want it all done either on Monday or Tuesday, we're going to have to bring in another vehicle, because we're going to have to bring in another crew, because it's not, the crews that are already here now are already on a truck. So we'd have to bring in another crew to do it either all on Monday or all on Tuesday, which is the Tuesday, which would be the trash and the bulk. So that's one.
Ken, not to interrupt
Yes.
you, I'm sorry, but maybe you can just articulate to me a little better why you would need another truck, because I just heard you say that you go through to pick up the bulk on Monday. Whatever's left is the oversized for the village to investigate, and you come back out to pick it up. Wednesday. Let's say everyone was compliant. It's a miracle. Everyone's compliant. Wouldn't that same truck be picking up all the bulk
Yes.
on that day?
If everybody was compliant 100%.
So let us know whether or not, is there something that the village has to do to short circuit the need for you to come back on Wednesday? And therefore, I'm still not seeing the jump to needing another truck.
Because the idea is they want all of the bulk gone, including the oversized piles, okay? Or the non-conforming piles, we'll just call it. So in order to do that, you know, we have to bring in another truck, because today it could be 5, tomorrow it could be, you know, 7. At the end of the day, if everybody was compliant on Monday, there was no reason for us to come in, because there will be nothing out in the street, so there's no reason for us to come in on Wednesday. We come in Tuesday, we pick up trash, no bulk, no problem. The issue is the non-conforming piles that are left out there, and you know, it's difficult to do it all in one day if we don't come back on Wednesday to do it.
I have a question on that. If a homeowner is putting out an oversized pile, and you document it,
Yes.
you pick it up, you put it away, and we bill.
No, we.
Well, no, I'm asking.
Oh,
If that was hypothetically possible, such as somebody going around on Sunday, let's say we're picking it all up on Tuesday. I'm just going to make an argument, or Monday. I don't care the day. Village goes out 7 o'clock in the morning, circles the village or 6 o'clock, goes out for an hour, checks out all the oversized piles, knows who they are. They're cited, and then you'd pick them up. Would that solve the problem?
if the issue is, you know, the oversized piles, yeah, but there, you know, there's got to be, you know, a huge effort on the enforcement side to make sure that we are aware of what the oversized piles are, so we can make the plans and say, hey, we're going to, you know, 5 addresses, we have to pick all these up. It's been
Well,
cited.
let me ask you a question, technically. How many piles, on average, do you find oversized? A dozen, five?
It's been quite good. It's usually about 5.
Okay.
The best I've seen is 6 or 7.
Okay, so let's say we had no more than 10 piles. Your guys tagged them, even if they didn't pick them up. They tagged them, called the village, Caesar or somebody like that, went out and documented it. On the last part of the day, you go back and pick up the piles, and they're billed. I'm just asking, does that solve it for everybody else, the 1,286, or in this case, 1,280 or so homes that are compliant? And then the garbage piles aren't sitting out all day. And then anybody else who's putting out a pile, because we don't just have the big piles, we also have people putting out piles any day of the week, small things. So that wouldn't solve that problem, although it would allow the officer, the code enforcement officer, to know that everything was picked up on Monday, so therefore it must have been left out, unless a homeowner calls and said, you missed me. Would that solve the problem?
Okay, so let me understand. So you're saying before we come to the city, there's going to be somebody from this?
No, let's say you guys are driving around and there's 5 whole piles.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's 5 whole piles out there. You now tag it. You can tag it with the yellow tag, I don't care. You call the village manager and say, we have these 5 properties, and we're still driving around picking up piles. We have these 5 properties, we're gonna go pick them up now on it's your last circle around. One truck stays and picks up the last 5 piles. They're documented, they're put violations on, and they're charged.
The violation coming not from us, from the city?
Correct.
Yeah.
But then you pick them up that same day, so they're off the street.
I guess the question is the problem
Or a
you don't have
citation, whatever the
enough
term is.
truck to pick up all
Thank you.
the yard trash in one day?
Cited.
Well, because, again, with yard waste, it's a bit unpredictable, because at least with trash, everybody has a trash can, they
Right.
put it out. With yard waste, not everybody's going to have something out every day or every Monday. So if you have a street that has 10 houses, maybe half put them out this Monday and maybe only 2 put it out the following. So it's very unpredictable. But again, the only concern I have with that idea is that on days where like a whole bunch of people have it out and they're all legal, I mean, there's everything's fine, and there's no issue. The truck is full, they got to go to the dump and, come back. So we want to be able to at least bring in another vehicle, like a claw truck or something, to just help out with those type of scenarios.
If I remember correctly, when we used to have it on Mondays, or was it on Mondays or Tuesdays? We used to have everything on Tuesdays. Sometimes your guys would make a sweep through the village on Monday, pick up stuff that was out, and then come back on Tuesday and finish up. So is the question, in fact, that you guys just can't do it all in one day?
Not without bringing in another crew.
So what's the
Because,
problem?
but again, our costs are set based on the way it is today.
But you,
Okay,
no, wait a
so-
second. But you, in fact, quoted us picking up 2 cubic yards every single week.
Correct.
If you're saying you can't do that.
No, we're doing that now. We're not talking about that. We're talking about oversized piles, because that's where all this is
Okay, but
generating.
if they're charged, this is my point here.
Yeah.
You now gain your cost back because it's being charged to the person who's putting them out. And I'm sure 5 piles isn't, my point is, if it's only a few houses, that's not requiring a whole nother truck.
No, I know, but the only concern I have with that idea is the charge part. From the city's perspective, in a lot of the cities that we do this on, there's a cure period when there's some sort of violation of a wrong set out. That's the only issue not issue, but concern that, because if you're saying, hey, listen, we tag it, we're going to bill you, I don't know, 5, whatever's out there, that's what we're going to bill you, and we pick it up, and then, the city's going to bill the resident, and then we're going to need to get our recover the dollar amount. That's the only concern.
My thought is, the way we used to do it was, Caesar or somebody used to go around in the morning, take a picture of it, everything got picked up. If it's in fact too much, the people get billed for it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
They're putting it out. Everybody's an adult. You put out too much, you get charged for it. And that's actually between the village and the residents. I guess the next question is, what's the additional charge per cubic cubic yard.
It's $20 a cubic yard over the,
Where was that set? Yeah, because we discussed last time at the last meeting, since you're picking up, I think we figured out that it was actually you're charging us $1 a cubic yard on a yearly basis per house. Because you broke it down for us, how much it was for the yard trash, how much it was for sanitation waste.
For each house.
Right, and so it actually came out to be like $1 a cubic yard. And that's something the village would work out, what we're gonna pay you, as long as it was a reasonable amount for you. It seems to me there's a big difference between a cost of $1 a cubic yard versus 20.
Because the 20, again, was established, I don't know, whenever it was established, but was not really for the 20 being a cost, more for a deterrent.
Yeah,
So
I want-
people can be.
yeah, I wanted
can
to jump in
be-
there, yeah.
Yeah, can be, aware that, hey, if you're not compliant, there's a hefty penalty for it. That's where the amount came out of. Just to answer that.
And I wanted to explain why
Right.
that becomes an issue,
Right.
is if not, everybody, well, the question is, would a bunch more people, instead of having 5 piles, would you have 25 piles, is the question. And then the other issue is then it would then impose on them not being able to pick it all up in one day. So I think there has to be a balance between the cost. If we're going to do this, it has to be a reasonable thing.
Yeah.
And then also the understanding that if they want a special pickup, they have to call. The other issue is we have, and I saw it, I drove around this past weekend. You have people, it's hurricane season, everybody's starting to trim, yay. But invariably, some landscape companies decide to put that out on the curb, and they're doing major tree trimming, and they're not supposed to, so then you have these large size piles that are caused by tree trimmers because the homeowner thinks they can just pick it out for Waste Pro, and then there's a cost. So there's some of that as well. So I think there has to be a balance personally between what is the very overly expensive to the, okay, everybody stick it out, it's going to be really cheap. So I think there has to be a deterrent, but I'm not sure how significant that deterrent.
I agree with that.
One thing I agree with is I think that if I'm reading the consensus in the dais is that there's definitely have to be a real, talks and with the village manager in terms of how we're going to present, something to the village, as a whole, rather than, because this is now my second time, discussing this, and we need to sit down with the village manager and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what how it's going to look like, what the cost is going to be, and things of that nature. Because you made a very good point, which I didn't think of right away, but it's 5 today, but if we start doing, we'll bill it, we'll pick it up. Nobody else knows we're billing it until they get the bill, but everybody else doesn't see that. And then you'll start seeing a lot more, people putting out more stuff and more stuff. Hey, listen, they did it for my neighbor, and so that's one thing we want to avoid. So, definitely, it's time for village manager and us to sit down and come up with a concrete plan on how to move forward.
Yeah, that's why the red tag or something like that, so that everybody
Yes.
knows. But before I just, Commissioner Ross, I've been turning the wrong direction, so Commissioner Ross.
So I want to understand your ask. You came in with a request to use a claw truck to pick up
No,
bulk trash?
my reason for being here is to provide suggestions and ideas to better effectively pick up the I want to say the bulk, because we are picking up the regular bulk, that's not a problem, is if we need to have, if at some point we come up with say, okay, we're going to do everything on Monday, but we're going to have to bring in a specific truck, and usually it's a claw truck, to hit, not all the streets, but the designated areas, then we could, that would be an idea or a suggestion.
Okay, well, let me give you a little bit of the history of this bidding out and outsourcing with Waste Pro. Is one of the major selling points was that we would, instead of having trucks rolling in the village 4 or 5 days a week, as we did with our crew, because our trucks and crew are small, we would have trucks rolling in the village 2 days a week. And Waste Pro would dedicate whatever resource they needed to dedicate to get the job done in 2 days a week. That was a big selling point for us. Because it meant that our streets would be tidy, they would only have stuff out on 2 days, and we wouldn't have all of the fumes and trucks and wear and tear on our streets. Then, as it turned out, Waste Pro came and said, well, we can't pick both all the bulk waste and the kitchen trash up in one day, Tuesday. We've tried to do it, we've looked at different ways to do it, we've looked at different routes to do it, but we just can't do it. So how about if we amend the contract to allow us to pick up the bulk waste on Monday, and then on Tuesday we'll do the kitchen, and then on Friday we'll do the recycling in the kitchen again. And there was some debate at the time about it. We talked about it quite a bit. I think Mr. Mackey was here when we had to had that discussion. And so we said, okay, understandable. We have a lot of trees. We have a lot of foliage. We love our plants and our trees. Okay, we'll try to work it out to compromise, make that compromise. And so we amended the contract so that it would allow for yard trash Monday, garbage Tuesday, Friday, recycling, and garbage. As part of all of those agreements, Waste Pro was supposed to commit some resource for a major education campaign, and that would go a long way in getting compliance, making sure people know their days, know their amounts, know what the penalty will be, and I agree that there has to be some, we can't pick up for $1 a yard, because the point is you need to have some regularity, and you can't one day have 10 cubics or 20 cubics and another day have 2. So I think that Waste Pro has to follow through with that commitment to help with an education campaign to get information out to all of our residents. It's very effective with the recycling bins, those labels that are on there. It tells you exactly what you can put in there and what you can't. Maybe if we could put out some magnets or a hand card or a sticker, something they could put on. I mean, we're talking about bulk trash, so that's mobile. But that's going to be a big push to get it done.
Agreed.
And this system of coming back on Wednesday to pick up the extra size piles, I think that is a misallocation of resource. I think that if you're out here on Monday, then it should be documented and you should pick everything up. People will get to learn not to put more than 2 cubic yards out when they have to pay $20 for the excess yardage.
I want to add also to your comments is, we were on the cusp of doing the education part of that with, prior staff, and, things kind of change. The other thing that I think the village manager and we spoke of, the city gets, I think it's twice a year, maybe 3 times a year on a Saturday where everybody can put out
Quarterly.
quarterly bulk pickup, and that's still there. I mean, I forget what the date that we set on.
July 22nd.
I'm sorry?
It's July 22nd?
Yeah. So, and that's something that, there was a couple of quarters that were missed, recently. So, that's something that we brought up, hey, it's time to do the quarterly bulk pickup, which is usually done, I believe is on a Saturday, is when, and then there's a time frame between this time and that time.
Yes.
So, yeah, I agree. The education is key. We had flyers all ready to go and everything. So, it's kind of got sidetracked. So we'll definitely get together and we'll put that out there. In terms of the education, if we have to mail out flowers, we'll mail out flowers. If we have to come and put flyers in, in everybody's door, we'll do that.
Right.
And it'll mirror exactly what's in, on the website as it is right now.
I seem to recall
Yeah.
there was a design and there was something, a
Yes.
draft already in place, and then things
Yeah.
sort of fell apart, so
Yeah.
we didn't go through with it. But those quarterly yard trash pickups and the education campaign, and making sure that people get invoiced when they have excessive yardage, I think that will go a long way to controlling that situation. As far as the invoicing of it, according to the contract, it's the village that does the invoicing to the resident. Waste Pro will charge the city whatever excess tonnage it needs to fill the obligation for the annual contract. I don't believe that Waste Pro charges us for every excess pile.
No,
Correct
it's
me if I'm
anything
wrong.
over 2 cubic yards. to the city, not to the resident.
Right, but since not every, this is one of the things that I just want to be clear. Not every resident puts out 2 cubic yards each week. So we had an annual amount as part of the contract that you anticipated the homeowner having, correct?
I'm sorry, they what?
When you made the contract, you had an idea of what the total tonnage would be for this community for bulk trash, correct? Okay. So as long as we're not exceeding that amount, and that can be documented, then I don't see why that's a contractual problem.
The contract includes up to a certain amount of tonnage.
Yeah, you have, I don't know the numbers right now, but in our industry, it's called the generation rate.
2,700?
The generation rate, there's the generation rate for trash, and there's garbage waste, and then there's a generation rate for bulk.
Right.
And I got to run the numbers to see where we at as we stand as it relates to what the number is. It's a yearly number.
Yeah, actually, I think we're according to the contract, we're supposed to get reports on what the tonnage actually was, so we might be due
We'll get
for
it.
that report
Yep.
soon.
Right.
And I believe the last meeting where you spoke, you said we were well under the annual rate.
Trash.
No, yard trash, bulk pickup.
Bulk
We were
pickup.
under that rate. You said it came out about the right amount. So if it came out about the right amount, whether you picked it up on Monday or Wednesday, it still came under that amount. What we're concerned about is having you come back on Wednesday.
Correct.
So in fact, theoretically, you should be able to pick it all up on Monday.
In theory. But
In theory, the only reason that's stopping you from picking up everything on Monday is the fact that we have to be able to bill the resident. If we can bill the resident that same day, you could then theoretically, hopefully pick up everything up Monday. We don't have piles out for another 2 days.
And that would solve,
That's the concern.
and that would solve a problem, Vice Mayor.
I just had a couple of questions. First, and Attorney Hearn, if you have the contract in front of you, is there a provision in there as to when we're supposed to be getting these reports that lets us know where we are as far as our tonnage?
It's the 20th of every month.
Yeah, it's once a month.
And are we getting those reports?
No.
So us not getting those reports as a city and sitting here as a commission, it makes it very difficult for us to really make decisions with your presentations. If we're under, which means there would be some wiggle room in the bulk pickup, I can tell you I don't have a lot of foliage on my property. I rarely put out bulk pickup, and I'm sure there's more than a handful in this community that don't put out bulk. So if you come to make presentations to us and we're hearing you need another truck or billing, we can't make clear choices if we don't have the reports, we don't know where we are with tonnage, we don't know if there's room for even when there is an oversized bulk trash put out. If we're way under, then even with the oversized pickups, we're not hitting our threshold. So I'd like to know, what do we need to do to get these reports?
Yeah, they're quarterly now. Looking at July 15th, looking at the last quarter, or it's going to be the next.
I think and I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but I think the idea is let's get the trash off the streets, bulk or not, by the Monday, so that we're not running around seeing trash piles every day, 7 days a week. And this will allow the code enforcement officer not to have to guess to figure out, I must tell you, I've never paid attention so much in my life to palm fronds and other materials that are out 7 days a week. I employ everybody watching this who's got neighbors, please don't put out bulk trash except starting 9 a.m. Sunday morning, and it's done by Monday. And by 7 a.m. Monday, you've got to put out what has to be out. That's it. And please try not to put out anything that's above the 2 cubic yards so you don't have an issue with payment. I think we have wiggle room in the amount we're picking up. So I am asking to please make sure by Monday everything's picked up and to work with the city manager to do that. I think that would eliminate a lot of these issues. And that's my opinion, I'd like consensus from the commission to ask the city manager whether or not we can just make sure on Monday they're picked up and then find a reasonable rate to bill the resident, not at I personally don't want to see it at $20 an hour. I think that's a bit excessive.
I agree. I'd like to see you work with the village manager on this. I'd like to see the trucks on the road less days. It's from the original contract, we're at double the days of what the initial agreement was. It went from 2 to 3 to 4 days. It makes it difficult for, like the mayor just said, the code officer to determine violations because it seems like there's just always something on the road.
Garbage cans, trash cans. If we actually did it, there was only like one day a week, but we weren't seeing trash cans. And that's the problem. Because if you can put it out 9 o'clock Sunday, you've got Monday and Tuesday, so they're out till Wednesday morning sometimes. Then they're out again Thursday night for Friday, and they're out sitting around on Saturday. Basically, this place has trash cans multiple days a week, and that was never the intention here. And
But
so-
we're only talking about bulk, because the
I
trash is too
I
much.
understand that,
Yeah.
but from our perspective in terms of always seeing trash or garbage, the whole selling point, which Commissioner Ross so eloquently said, was that we were only going to see it less time. And instead, what we're ending up with is more, and that's because we used to have side yard pickups, and now only some people have side yard pickups, so you're seeing garbage cans a little bit more frequently. And I think that's part of the issue. However, I think a step in the right direction will be to make sure on Monday that these piles are off the ground, period. And the other option I would like to suggest is that we start not putting out piles at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, but maybe towards afternoon, just because I think that's too long. But that may be a separate discussion.
Christian, is it possible to have Caesar, for example, go around early Monday morning to take a look and see what piles there are? And
It
who
is.
needs to be billed? And Waste Pro will just then just pick up everything.
Well, and that's possible. As it stands, I believe Waste Pro has been snapping the photos of the piles and then emailing them to Caesar with the address, and then Caesar goes out there at that point.
Right, but
And
that's an extra day.
so-
Right, if there's only 5 of them,
Well-
why can't we use a phone call?
Yeah, and it.
The minute they get them,
They
call
can.
and say, Caesar, come over here. And then this way, at least
Absolutely.
on Monday, 5, 6 calls, we're done.
But we can certainly do that.
Nobody was ever given that option before. The way it used to
Well-
be was you put your trash pile out, if it was too big, they took a picture and you got billed for it, and that was it.
Okay, if you guys are okay with that, then we
Do
can
we have a
move to that.
consensus?
But what about,
Hold on,
what- I have
Commissioner
I have a
Ross.
question. What about if there's a pile that is 15 yards long, and we don't have, it's not a manual pickup?
Understandable. If there's a situation whereby it's so heavy and so big and you have to have a claw truck and you don't have one here, okay, either you'll get it, here's my thought, is if you really can't get it in there Monday, be able to get it in there Tuesday, not on Wednesday. I think we can live with a day.
Yeah, but, Mayor, understand that these trucks are allocated. We have vehicles that are, we don't have vehicles just parked waiting for something to occur. We have vehicles that are allocated to every part of our service footprint every single day. And with that comes spares that if something goes wrong with the truck, they're the ones that are on standby because the same drivers have to come back, go get the truck, and then start the route again. So, we have to be cognizant that when we bring in the vehicles, we're bringing in vehicles that have been slated for the city with a spare vehicle, which is typically a rear loader. And because I tell you, a lot of the piles that are oversized are not piles that are manual piles. They require, a claw.
Okay, so
It's
why?
hard for me to understand how, out of 1,800 or 1,200 homes, 1,200 sites that you service, 5 on average a week are such a major issue. It's hard for me to understand that.
It's not a major issue for us. We're okay with the way it's going. We're fine with it. It's just that they wanted to, we don't know. You can come in on a week and have nothing, either regular stuff or bigger stuff. And then the following week, you can come in and you can have every single variation of everything you can possibly find in there. So we have equipment allocated here every day for the regular bulk stuff. The
Okay,
stuff
okay,
that-
but I want to make a point on this, because this is what kind of sticks out for me. And that is, I drove around, found 30 trash piles that were not claw material. Okay, they were just a little bit bigger than 2 cubic yards, and they were being left. And I spoke to Billy about this. They were being left because they were oversized.
And that was something that we discussed with Bill, and we fixed that.
Okay,
We
so
fixed
then,
that.
so now I want to go back to a solution, because I don't want to haggle this back and
Yes.
forth, so we can get actually a solution to the problem. So if you find out on Monday that you need a claw truck, I don't know who decided Wednesday was our day for a claw truck. Can you find a way to make that day Tuesday? So that at least,
We don't
at
want claw
least-
trucks.
let me, please let me finish my thoughts, everybody. If he has an enormous pile that cannot be done, and we do have them on occasion, I'm not talking small piles, I'm talking enormous piles, where there's no way they can do it by hand, I get it. only on those occasions, if you have a pile that absolutely requires a claw truck, make that Tuesday our day, not Wednesday. Because at least this way you're not on the road and the pile's not sitting there an extra day. That's all I'm asking. I think that's a viable alternative. But what I don't want to see happening is a claw truck running around using to pick up 3 palm fronds or a pile that's a little bit bigger.
Right.
Or, where basically the guys don't want to lift it.
That makes no sense.
No. Yeah. I think the contract actually says they can't use claw trucks. And,
Okay, but here,
we will see that kind of pile maybe once a year, if at all.
but here's what I'm saying to you. If it requires, I'm not saying for any pile that does not require it. We do have a few, and during bulk pickup days, I believe you send out a claw truck. So I've seen on bulk pickup days, they come out in a claw truck because the anticipation was they would have a great deal. They stopped doing that because they realized they didn't. But I'm just saying, if something requires it, and he can work with the manager to help determine whether or not it's absolutely required, at least this way. Because we're bringing in trucks anyway on Wednesday, correct? For specifically exorbitantly large piles, you come pick them up with a claw truck, correct? Okay, so it's already happening. We can't go backwards. So my question is, if you work with the city manager and you both agree on what is the criteria for a claw truck, okay, at least this way on Tuesday, it's done. And it's not sitting out there for 48 hours. That's my thought. You guys can join in. And everything else gets picked up on Monday. Every single, except for that one exclusion, everything's picked up on Monday.
Where did let's say a year ago, where did the extra truck come from on Mondays that you used to make a quick round in the village when a pickup for bulk trash was on Tuesdays?
I probably wasn't in the city at the time when that was happening.
My thought was, from what
Yeah.
I remember, was it came out of North Miami. Your guys picked up bulk trash there also. The guys said, hey, we've got half the truck is empty. Let's go somewhere else and see what else we can pick up.
Yeah, that probably sounds,
So that probably sounds
Yeah.
right. So possibly there are times. My thought is, let's pick up 99% of the stuff that we need right now. Go out there, take a look. If something's an unbelievably huge pile, well, then maybe we need to talk to the homeowner and say, hey, you've got to make arrangements to have this picked up yourself. Nobody's going to put an unbelievably huge pile out there. Even when I put out my stuff, it's 2 cubic yards, maybe 4 cubic yards. And what I'll do is divide it up with a neighbor. If you're looking at a pile that's 15 cubic yards, the homeowner didn't do it.
absolutely.
That's right, so the homeowner didn't do it. And I guess that's possibly one of the other things we need to do is when people are driving around, take a look and say, hey, guys, you put this out, you have to pick it up. Well, let's take care of 99% of the piles. We'll worry about billing the owners, the residents. Everything will be picked up on Monday.
Okay, with this, because I know we're running late, we've had a long discussion, I'd just like to get some basic consensus from the commission and direction to the village manager. Do we have a consensus that we want everything picked up on Monday and billing the homeowners and finding a reasonable, or not so reasonable, but something under $20 to do? Yes?
Yes.
I'm fine with the $20 per cubic yard because it's going to involve staff time and following up and invoicing and following up, so I'm fine with that. I think that the price is high enough for a deterrent so that we don't get excessive piles like that.
Okay, let's do a consensus. Do we want, is there a consensus for 20 or a consensus for something a little bit less than 20?
I'd like to leave that up to the village manager.
Yeah, it's going to be, we either have an ordinance on it or we don't. If we have the
Right.
ordinance, we got to follow it.
We have an ordinance?
Bring it back. If it's a resolution, we can bring it back as well.
Okay.
Do we? What do we have now? Do we have any idea?
Well, historically, we've been doing it, so I would believe it's in an ordinance. I've never had to deal with it, so.
The rates in an ordinance?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what we did do was, we created an ordinance that said all village charges will be set by a resolution, so that we didn't have to do those 2 readings. So now it's in a resolution, we still need to, hear a
Change, it would have to
resolution.
come back to the commission to a resolution.
Okay.
Yes.
So do we have a consensus to work with the village manager, work with Waste Pro to solve this, come back to us with a concrete solution? If it requires a resolution, we'll bring it forth then.
Along with that, the education piece and
Yes.
how we're going to get the information out to our residents who
Yes.
have any changes.
Yes.
Okay.
There's $5,000 in the contract for outreach.
Yes. Again, that was another component that we were going to start, because I said, hey, I brought it up, not with current staff, but prior staff, you guys have this $5,000 community outreach dollars. How do you want to do this?
And one other, I'm sorry.
I apologize, Mayor. And I'd also like to see the reports, however they're supposed to be
Yep.
submitted, whether it's quarterly or
July
monthly.
15th is the next one. If you could-
I want them to start coming before us.
Okay.
Well,
And
I'll
the-
take it, I'll give it to the manager, and then he can disseminate
The,
it out.
the other piece was you made an offer for some cooperation with the police.
Yes.
I'm recommending that we actually move on that and agree to that as well. We have a consensus on that? Is that no cost to the village? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Anything else from the village manager? Okay.
Just to finish that piece off, when the reports are monthly, we don't need to have Waste Pro here unless we want to beat up on them some more. They could ju- You could just add the report to our piece,
Yeah.
weekly
Absolutely.
report or our
I think
agenda.
we have a consensus on that, yes? Okay. Yes. Okay. Now, are there any actually, I already did that. I actually moved that up. My apologies. But I'll ask again, are there any deletions or withdrawals from the agenda? No. Okay. Public comments. You've been very patient. Come on up. Yes.
Dan Samaria, 1030 Northeast, 121st Street.
Please sign in, everybody.
I know. When we had our own sanitation, when we had our own trucks, we didn't have this problem. So I'm still confused on why they need have another truck. We didn't have this problem when we had our own sanitation department picking up all the trucks. I mean, all the trash and stuff. So I don't understand why they need another contract. When you make up a contract, you put into the contract on how much trucks you're going to need and so on. You don't come back 6 months later or a year later saying, I need to do something else. That's just my opinion. Christian, I hope that we're going to have the manager's report like we had in the past. Maybe we need to come back with the newsletter again because people like to see the breakdown on everything that's going on. We had a lot of good response with that. Your letter that you sent out was very good. My only complaint that I had was page 3 and 4 was the front, which talked about you being cited with your cars. I was under the impression that I was going to be cited with my car's parking. One of the things that I know, and I wanted to ask the chief if we are doing this, when business comes into Biscayne Park and they want to solicit it, they have to register with the police department. We still do that. We are enforcing that? Okay, because I know with my pest control company, I have to register if I want to put a fly out. Because I'm seeing a lot of businesses coming in that are trying to solicit it. We don't even know if they're real businesses. They can be just individuals casing the city. So I think that we need to enforce that more. I want to give 2 months' notice ahead of time for my 9/11 collection. I hope that the city will let me put that again for September 1st to the 30th, like I do every year. I wanted to find out if what we are doing in reference to this police officer that we have suspended, on how that's going. Hopefully we can get that taken care of. Also, as I sponsored with Meet the Candidates, I also want to have one, and I'm going to work with the city manager on that, on welcome back party for our recreation director. But I also want to have it to where the residents really get involved, and actually we can promote the rec center. So I'm hoping with that party would help do that. Residents have cameras, and I don't know if this is possible, that we can get all the residents that have cameras in Biscayne Park, to almost like work together with the police department. That would help, like if they have cameras in the street, that we can always organize that. I don't know if the police department does that. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any other public comments? As a reminder, you will be able to comment on any of the other ordinances coming up right before those are coming up, whether the landscape or the driveway.
Sure. Janie Anderson, 11th Place and 119th Street. I know you guys are going to be discussing, well, hopefully going to be discussing the swale ordinance tonight. The only reason I want to say I do support parking in the swales because I think it's the lesser of the evils compared to driveways down the side of the house and paved over backyards. And in case some of you haven't seen some of the driveways that have been put on some duplexes recently, there's not a whole lot of front yard left. none of those seem conducive to like increasing property values or aesthetics. And whatever you decide, we've got to get people off their front lawns. So I certainly hope you won't go for a whole year after enactment to come into compliance. But what I am asking you to do, please, is not contradict yourselves. If you allow swale parking, you're effectively saying vehicles in a swale aren't an issue. Yet, according to Chapter 5.3.4, the only thing we can put in the swale to protect our grass are those domes that are completely useless. They're meaningless. And we're always told, well, that's the only thing we can do because it's a safety issue. Well, they don't catch the driver's eye. And for those of us who do take pride, who do work in our yards and make every effort to follow the ordinance, which says we are to maintain our swales in good health, we need some relief. If you live on a corner, and I've got 2 corners, but even a lot of the interior lots on the extremely narrow streets, no matter what you do, it's a losing battle because we've got a significant amount of drivers who seem to be quite incapable of staying on the road. And yeah, trucks and buses get the most notice, but cars are just as bad. Last year, okay, a Waste Pro truck happened to really take out my back corner. They were very nice. They resodded. 2 days later, a school bus took the same sod out. I managed to save enough of it. It looked great. Well, that didn't last long. So I've got pictures to show you the demise of my back swale. But I'm just asking you, please be consistent. If you're going to allow swale parking, then please change 5.3.4, whether you allow some vegetation of a significant enough height that it catches the driver's eye, whether it's reflective sticks, whatever, but please give us some sort of relief. Thanks.
Thank you, Janie.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. First, I want to commend the chief and the police department and the manager for their work over the past several weeks, providing a higher visibility on the streets. This is something that the chief pledged he would do when we made him chief. So, good job, chief, and congratulate him on recently becoming a father again.
Congratulations.
I'm going to talk about Crime Watch a little bit since it was a topic of conversation earlier. First of all, there was a comment made tonight that I'll address. Yeah, I think that any and all resources should be utilized to get information out and disseminate it to the public. And in connection with that, Citizens Crime Watch of Biscayne Park has established a system to disseminate timely information of crime reporting incidents here. The system has proven itself over the years to work in helping provide info to the police and to keep the residents timely apprised on crime events. It seems apparent a few weeks ago to me that this system was tampered with. I was informed. What happens is I make weekly calls to the police department, and I have a designated officer that I deal with, which is our detective. When I called him, I was told that the only information I was going to receive going forward would be at a commission meeting from the police chief's report. This is not something I believe that emanated either from the manager or the police chief, based on our previous history in conversations and working together in the past. This type of interference can result in a lack of transparency. It can also overburden, or rather slow up the system in getting information out. For the past 8 years, we've been working to build a strong Citizens Crime Watch network in Biscayne Park. The organization has grown from less than 200 to approximately 800 residents. A strong and close relationship with the police department is essential and has been established during this time. No previous commission ever expressed any issues with the Biscayne Park Citizens Crime Watch information delivery system over the 8 years that I've been coordinating the Biscayne Park network. One of the purposes of the Citizens Crime Watch group is to develop a network of residents that the ears and eyes for the police, look out for their neighbors, and understand when to call the police if something looks out of place or suspicious. Interference from any elected official that may be trying to control the flow of information to the residents is not acceptable. On another, I already thank you. Well, as far as the driveway ordinance, I saw that we have 2 sets of driveway ordinances. It doesn't seem to make sense to have tried to recreate the wheel here on the driveway ordinance. I read through the driveway ordinance submitted by Tracy, our mayor. And there's some issues in there that I think don't work, and we'll see how that plays itself out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Anderson. I'd just like to commend the chief on the statistics that he gave. One of the things I would like to see is how many, what's the number of actual traffic stops? Because I'm sure it's a higher number than citations or tickets issued, which is a good deterrent, and I think it's a good thing to know how many actual traffic stops. Going on the driveway ordinance, I believe every property should be allowed to have one parking space on approved parking surface in the swale. I don't think the space should be more than 20 feet in length and at least 10 feet wide, and the cars have to be parked at least the wheels, at least 3 foot off from the pavement, so there's room for people to be walking. And if a person happens to have a driveway, you shouldn't be required to have a driveway if you only have one car and if you want to be able to park it on the swale. But if you do have a driveway, the approach through the swale is subtracted, whatever the width is, subtracted from that 20 feet. So we don't end up paving over the swales. Also, too, when you get into the budget, that you're going to be on the millage rate, I urge you to stay with the millage rate we have now and to keep it all the way on through. We have so many things that we don't have funds for doing, especially on the infrastructure. If we happen to have, because the price of homes have gone up, revenue is coming in a little higher, you need it. There's so much digging out that we have to do on the infrastructure.
Thank you, Bob.
Dan Keys. I approve of the smart plan resolution that you're contemplating tonight. And secondly, I'd encourage the village to look into whether the other train that's going to start soon, you might at some point have a stop in North Miami, the one that goes from downtown Miami all the way to Orlando. It'd be nice to have some reason to endure the 32 train noises that are going to come by our houses on a regular basis if we can jump up here and get on a train to Orlando. Regarding the Waste Pro contract, you have one. And it says what you can do and what you can't do, and it doesn't give you the authority to do something that's not in the contract without you all knowing about it and approving it, in my opinion. You know, we don't have cranes. I think it's explicit that we don't have cranes. I don't know how they were approved, okay? I don't remember it coming in front of the commission that we can have cranes for any reason. I'm not saying that 1 or 2 piles a year might need a crane, but if you authorize that in any way by a change to the contract that you all agreed to, then it better be very, very few times during the course of the year that you do that. That's a slippery slope, trust me. Regarding the two presentations for driveway ordinances, I tend to want to go and work with the Mayor Trutman version of that. There are issues there, some coordination issues and so forth. I generally think it's going in the right direction. Common sense for our community that's built out and already has existing parking situations that should be preserved, in the future. I'm not particularly okay with things like trying to socially engineer our society by dictating the number of parking spaces, the maximum number of parking spaces you can have on your property. I take issue with Commissioner Ross's comment. I understand it. I think that maybe she's technically correct, but she made a comment in there that parking was never permitted, and it is not permitted in our code on the right-of-way. Okay, and she used as an example of that the fact that we have a code that says you can't park trucks on the right-of-way except in these circumstances. Well, we've always permitted parking on the right-of-way. We've always permitted parking spaces on the right-of-way, improved parking spaces. It's very clear that over the 49 years I've been around, we've allowed parking on the right-of-way and improvement of those spaces on the right-of-way. And, you know, if our current way of interpreting the code says that you don't have the right unless it's in the code, well, great. We need to change the code then to permit it because we've always permitted it and we should permit it.
Time.
Okay, good. How about that?
Thank you, Dan.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street, about the swale ordinance. From the workshops that were done, you know, meeting after meeting, the consensus of that workshop, which was very well attended by residents, was to leave what we had for as long as I've lived here, we've had this, where you can improve 40% of your swale with impervious material, and if somebody wanted to put gravel or something else down the rest of it, they were allowed to do that and park. Reading some of the versions, I feel that you're trying to micromanage this community to a point that it's starting to feel like a condo. I looked at Miami Shore's code. It's a fraction of what we're presenting. We're trying to just micromanage everything. I want to talk about permit fees. Gary and I had a leak in our kitchen. We had to have a couple of cabinets ripped out. We went to code, to the building department. We had to pay a $200 permit fee to have a couple of cabinets ripped out. We had to pay a $200 permit fee for a plumber who charged me $300 for the entire job. And, you know, until it happens to you, you don't think about it. And I'd like all of you commissioners to start thinking about this, because permit fees have become ridiculous. I don't know how it could possibly cost. Why would even need a permit fee to have a cabinet ripped out, nothing put in, just ripped out, and have an inspector come to my house and say, yes, it was ripped out? And that's getting a little ridiculous. I think you should all start to think about the problems that residents have every day, like permit fees. Don't discourage people from applying for a permit knowing that it's going to cost them a fortune and have to go through the red tape. We want things done legally, but we want them done sensibly. I'd like somebody to start talking about our roads. I don't know, month after month goes by and nobody brings this up. The budget hearings are coming. I sat through the budget hearings last year. They made a lot of proposals. And you know something? I don't care if we changed managers, lost a manager, whatever. Nothing's been done. Everything's been put on hold. Just like Waste Pro. Tell me why not having a manager or having an interim somehow meant that we couldn't spend our $5,000 to educate this community, since putting garbage out on the wrong day is such a big issue. I'd like you to start thinking about improving the medians, and not just aesthetically. Start thinking about cutting down the seriously dangerous Australian pines that are going to fall on somebody. And there's an agenda item about communication. Where was the communication that you were going to be talking about swales, landscaping? Nothing was put out. Who would know that? I mean, how many people actually read the agenda and look at the backup material?
Time.
And I fault all of you, the commissioners and the village, for not sending this out on the e-blast. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Gary Kuehl, residing in close proximity to Barbara Kuehl. Not that we didn't spend enough time on Waste Pro, but the contract, as I remember, was not amended. It was a 6-month trial period, so it is not a contractual matter having the additional day. And at that time, their lame excuse was that in the year and a half they'd been on the job, they weren't able to train enough people to understand the route. So at this point, I think they've had enough time. I think these oversized piles are a very simple problem. Don't lower the fee. I mean, if you have 3 extra cubic yards, $60. I mean, if you make it so reasonable, I'll volunteer to put more out because it'll be a lot easier for me to do it. I go out of my way to save stuff and put it out in stages so I don't put out an oversized load. $20 a cubic yard is not much of a deterrent. Don't even think about it making it lower. And secondly, I like the idea of Waste Pro notifying the village of oversized piles instead of spending our time because of somebody else's problem to send our people around and waste the few resources we have in terms of personnel. Concerning the proposed ordinances, I think Beverly Hills or Indian Creek would think what's being proposed on one of these is absolutely absurd. Okay, last month we had 120 courtesy notices. This month we have 130. Does anybody think everything in the village is hunky-dory? Do we not see a lot of sore spots? The point being, before you come up with more draconian ordinances, let's get our house in order. Let's enforce our current ordinances. I'm not taking away from our code enforcement officer or our village manager, but we have a lot more work to do before we come up with something else that won't be enforced because it's so absurd. Thank you.
Fred Jonas. I don't live anywhere near either of the Kewells. I wanted to talk about item 12A. Tracy, this is yours. This is the alleged preference for more communication and transparency. Most of you won't know, Roxy will and Harvey might, but most of you won't know that, that this issue comes up with every commission, and it's a very worthy one in terms of attention. I'm glad you're paying attention to it and thinking through how to improve communication. It bedevils every commission that we've had that I know about. However, having said that, it does occur to me to wonder why you want more communication, and I'll give you two examples of what I'm talking about. Last month, we had the second reading of two ordinances, and they had to do with new boards. You had a line of people here, every one of them asked you not to install these two new boards. They communicated very clearly to you, and four of you communicated very clearly to them, which was that you couldn't care less what they wanted or what they thought. Last year, we had to choose a new manager, and I will tell you, because a number of you won't know this either, that there was tremendous support for Sharon Ragunan. Even before Sharon was hired, and even before anybody was running for a commission, Tracy, you made clear to me, and I'm sure to everybody else, that you didn't want Sharon, but everybody else did. I think everybody in the village, except for Barbara Watts, wanted Sharon to be our new manager. So, after we got her as our new manager, three of you set about to undermine her and her out of here. So again, the communication was very clear from your neighbors. This is what they wanted, and you were very clear to them that you didn't care. So I'm not sure, again, what exactly you want in terms of more communication. You're getting communication, you're hearing it, you're ignoring it, so I don't know what your problem is. In terms of transparency, this is one of the least transparent commissions I remember. This is a commission in which four of you will sing precisely the same song in precisely the same key every month, and it does, as they say, strain credulity if you're asking your neighbors to assume that there is transparency going on. I don't think much of anybody makes that assumption. So again, I would ask you, and I hope you'll discuss this and let us know, what exactly do you want? What did you have in mind when you said you wished that there would be more communication and more transparency?
Time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Britt Williams. I live on 118th and Griffin. I wanted to thank the police for stopping the Griffin Speedway. They blow by our house like it's, and we're the crazy neighbors who actually yell and scream at people. So thank you very much for stopping that. But I actually had a really quick question or suggestion. We have a lot of foliage in on our property, and when we work on the yard and we cut it down and we bring it from the back and from the side, we put it on the side, and then we have to keep moving the pile up incrementally, like day by day. So if we do it Saturday, we move it a little bit on Sunday, and then we put it out when it's supposed to be put out on Sunday night. I don't remember what the time is. I'm not the one who normally does it. Is there a way that we can actually put it out on Saturday? Ooh. Why not?
You might as well finish your comment. We'll discuss it afterwards.
Well, and the reason I'm asking this, some people don't have a lot of foliage, but we do. So we have to keep moving this pile, like, so,
I do too.
And moving it. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I had to ask the question. So, all right. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other public comments?
Hi, good evening, Barbara Watts, 118th Street. Couple of things. And I've been out of town, so I haven't welcomed the village manager or congratulated our new police chief. And I wanted to thank you and both of you and the commission for so much of the work that you've been doing. I know that a lot of things go on behind the scenes, and I know that much more time and effort goes into everything that you do. And especially with the new village clerk and the village manager, we have new people, a new staff, and in some cases a skeletal staff, and you're carrying on, and I appreciate it. So thank you to you and the commission. Also, I have a question for our police chief, if you don't mind. I was just wondering, with all the speeding tickets, have you broken down, figured out what the time is where we more often have speeders in the morning, rush hour, or in the afternoon? Is there a...
I'm sorry, Chief. Would you mind going to the mic? Thank you so much, just to make sure we get you on camera.
Calculated it, but I can tell you just from working here and working the road that it is normally rush hours morning, primarily on Northeast.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and then for our village manager, I was, and perhaps Commissioner Ross could remind me of this, but with PAFRA, and it just sounds as though you all are having to change, do an RFP for this, making when you mentioned additional payments and some dissent over another payment of sorts, I thought that we followed our contract and paid for the CAFRA already. So I'm concerned that, and I know we paid an extra $17,000 for more people to help on the CAFRA. So what additional charges were there? I'd like to know why there were additional charges. I thought we had a contract.
Commissioner Watts, just to pause, can you pause our time?
Okay, so I'll just leave that out there.
Okay.
Okay, and...
I'll let him answer it afterwards, okay?
Okay, and now I've lost my... and also there are, I think, and with the police reports and all, one thing when you try to communicate right on the next newsletter, I would hope that we might mention something people not to write to next door Biscayne Park, but to contact ask questions of the village manager, the village hall, the clerks, and the. So many much time is wasted with people saying, "Oh, is there going to be a trash pickup?" On 4th of July. When you just call the village, look at the website, you wouldn't need to do that. Okay, so that's all.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll close the floor to public comments. Do you want to answer the question?
Sure. With GLSC, the issue was that there was an overpayment, or they had invoiced us beyond what was contractually agreed to. The prior administrations had paid what was invoiced. When I got here, we looked at the amount that had actually been paid. We received another 2 invoices, I believe, for about $10,000 more since I've been here, and I've refused to pay those. And so that was the reason that we want to go ahead and look for a different auditor. So. I discussed that with the attorney, and we're looking at the options there. Realistically, it's about $10,000, and it would take, all of 10 minutes to run up $10,000 in legal fees, so it may not be worth it to go after that, unfortunately. So,
There also, just to clarify that, there also was, with prior management, an agreement due to the length of time and the work. We do not doubt that the work that was billed was done. However, it was not consistent with the contract. However, there was a separate document that the manager had executed that had not come in front of the commission, would be the annual. Really, when we met with him candidly, he has $15,000 more, or I believe it's
10,800?
10.8.
10.8, I think.
And we're certainly not paying any more of that. We obviously could dispute it. There would be needs to get people who no longer work here, former finance director and former manager, that would have to be our witnesses. And there are issues of what was authorized and not authorized. So we did had a discussion, did a memo. I think you had a discussion as well with the commission. It's something that's an option. Realistically, the amount of money you're talking about, the need to depose our witnesses who are no longer here and may not be as friendly, I think you would probably expend that in your legal fees.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So sorry. Okay, we're going to go ahead. It's been a long night, so we have a lot going on here.
I'm sorry, I have a couple of responses.
Oh, okay.
Just to tie up with that, there was also a single piece audit for the grant from the state. So that was an additional service. My understanding, although I haven't signed checks in many, maybe a year or more, my understanding is that there were additional services provided by the auditor in trying to bring finance staff up to speed to prepare for the audit. So we don't know the details of those conversations and authorizations. For the gentleman who remembered the sanitation department running very smoothly before we outsourced, as being someone on the inside, I could tell you that it did not run smoothly. There were many issues with completing the routes as well as maintaining, and as we all know, we all needed new equipment, which we didn't have the money to buy. So that's an answer to that. Mr. Kuehl, you're correct. We did not make an amendment to the Waste Pro contract for the pickup days. We did make an amendment when our disposal agreement with the county came to a conclusion. We signed an amendment and brought Waste Pro in for the disposal part of it, which wasn't part of it before. And it was just a trial period for the extra day. You're correct. Mr. Keys has left the room. It would take me very long to talk to him about his exception on my view of parking, but I hope we'll have that discussion further down the road.
Okay. I had only one comment. Actually two. I think the one thing I wanted to say regarding the driveway / swale / parking ordinance is that it's not about, and I wrote the language and I worked significantly hard to try and make sure that scenarios were there so that we could still use the swale. That was the premise. And that at the same time, with our very narrow streets, our average streets has a minimum of 20 feet for 2 cars to pass. We have several streets at 12 feet and 15 feet. So not having swale places to pull off is part of the reason why people are running over the grass. As far as the corner parking, which I think Janie brought up, I thought it was a great idea to deal with vegetation as a visible deterrent from people taking the corners as much. I think that will work much safer in the swales, and I think that might be something that's more amenable than just the domes, but that would have to be in a consideration here. But thank you for that thought. And that's it for me. Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, I guess I've got the same problem Britt does. I put my stuff out, and I bring it up part of the way so it's still behind the house, and then on Sunday, one of the guys that does some work with me comes out, and we put it out on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. It's just what you have to do. And I guess my only thought about all that is if the village said to me I could put out 20 cubic yards of trash every week, at the end of the year, the amount of cubic yards of trash I put out would be the same. I mean, I trim things back. I can't manufacture more. So The problem is Waste Pro. As I say, he had said last time he was here, everything they were picking up was well within contract. Yeah, if it's 15 cubic yards, it's a problem, we need to do something about it. But I'm more concerned about getting everything off the street on Mondays. If they can't pick it up in one day, that's not our problem. That's what the contract says. They need to be able to do something about it.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to consent agenda.
No, financial
Financial
update.
update.
I'm sorry, financial updates. B, floor's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'll start with the good news. On June 30th, the property appraiser certified the taxable value for the village, and it went up $19 million from the current fiscal year. That's approximately, in revenue to the village, that's about $168,000 that we'll be seeing, which is great. The last time your property values were this high was about 10 years ago, in 2007. So you've made quite a comeback from, you know, the real estate crash that happened a few years back. So, so we've got $186,000 extra in our budget for the upcoming year, which I have already started working on, and I'm looking forward to, you know, having a few workshops so that we can go over your wish list, if you will. I know that there's a lot of capital projects and things that the community wants to see done, and I know you want to see this money put to good use. We're currently, the manager and all of the department heads are going over all of our current costs. I can tell you right now that as a result of the big change in administration, which has hit pretty much every single department down the line, we're looking at a decrease of our budget, of the current budget, of about $300,000. That's without taking any operational costs or any cuts right now. These are all basically salaries and benefits that roll into it. So, you know, you have your FICA taxes, your retirement contributions, all of that trickles down, and it's a nice little nest egg. So we'll be looking at what you want to do with that money, you know, what directions we want to go in. Right now, we're still at the $785,000 reserve that was given to us by the auditor as of September 15th. I'm still calculating the fiscal year 16 audit or final numbers. It's been, and this is no secret to the manager because I complain about it every time I see him, but it's been very difficult to undo what was done in that past year. There was a lot of, I don't think it was willful, but maybe it was lack of knowledge, mispostings. There isn't really a line item that I can look at and point at and not find something wrong with it. So it's very time-consuming and painstaking, but, you know, I'm up for the job, and hopefully, now that I've got this preliminary 2018 budget in place, I'll be able to report to you, starting with next month, on your year-to-date actuals, because I know everyone wants to see that, and I'm getting really close. So having said that, I look forward to talking to you guys about the budget and your needs, and, you know, making the best of this. You know, we've got a possible increase in your homestead exemptions coming up in fiscal year 19, so we need to forecast and look forward and see what type of implications that's going to have for us financially, so that we don't lose sight of this little nest egg that we've got coming up this fiscal year. So that's pretty much all I've got for now. I've got, you know, if anyone has any questions or anything I can elaborate on.
Just, I know we're going to move on the RFP for the CAFR, correct? And
Yes, I think that at this point, you know, based on the past history, I think a new set of eyes and suggestions on how we can implement and put internal controls into place and procedures, so that if any of us ever isn't here, the next person can carry on and not have to recreate the wheel, which seems to be happening more often than not. And, you know, we would just want to simplify everything, keep it very basic, very transparent. I think you'll see I've really restructured your budget. I think you'll like it. I think it's very transparent, if you will, and you'll be able to look at any given line item and understand what those costs are going for and how they're being allocated. And, it's all driven off of your revenues. Obviously, we're not going to budget for any operating expenses that you can't afford. So, which is why we were also looking at, different options, including changing our banking facilities with something that actually helps the village, retain. We've got $2.3 million in the bank, and we're getting $500 a year for it, or $390, something like that. I mean, I understand that interest rates are low, but we have to make our money work for us in better ways. And if there's a bank out there who is willing to, help us out in some way, and this particular bank, their big sell is that they're doing this with various small municipalities that are comparable to yours that, the big banks have ignored. They don't want, it's almost like they don't want your money, but, so we really want to do something that helps the village across the board. And regardless of whether it's this bank or any other, we have to start looking at these things and just making smarter decisions. So.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
I look forward to seeing the year-to-dates when you can roll those out to us.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be at a commission meeting. If it could happen before, that would be ideal.
Great. So usually it takes me about 10 days from the end of the month to just reconcile everything. So, July 31st, so somewhere in the beginning of August, I would give you the July numbers.
Okay.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Tudor, did you have something? No? Okay. All right. Consent agenda? Is it,
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Attorney Hearn, would you like to go over resolution?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Resolution 2017-37. Is a resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, establishing a tentative millage rate of 9.7 for fiscal year 2017-18, establishing the current year rollback rate to be 8.8095%, and establishing the first and second public budget hearings as required by law, directing the village clerk and finance manager to file said resolution with the property appraiser of Miami-Dade County pursuant to the requirements of Florida statutes and the rules and regulations of the Department of Revenue of the state of Florida, establishing the time and location for the first and second public hearings, providing for an effective date. So I'll announce to you that 9.7 per thousand of assessed property is 10.11% over the rollback rate. The proposed times, and again, they can't conflict with school board or county. So the times that have been proffered here by the clerk is September 7th and September 21st. Both of those are at 6:30 p.m. and here at the log cabin. So those are the proposals. You need to go ahead and set that. If that's a problem, we should address that today so we can set those. And again, as far as the millage rate goes, you can go below that millage rate without having to do anything extraordinary. If you pass the millage rate and decide to go above it, we have to take extraordinary action, including sending first-class mail to everybody. So you want to make sure that this is the number you're comfortable with or lower.
I'd like to just ask the village manager his opinion on the settage of the millage and just to elaborate a little bit on the 9.7 as proposed.
Well, I think it's important that at this juncture, we set the millage at 9.7. We can always come down later as we get further in the budget process. As our Attorney Hearn just said, going back up is a whole nother process, much more labor intensive, much more expensive, quite frankly. So stick with the 9.7 now would be my recommendation. And then as we get the budget, we can look and see if we can actually bring the millage rate down some, which, I mean, we all want to do that if humanly possible. So.
Are there any other comments or questions or discussions? Commissioner Ross?
Yes, I would like to see us, two suggestions. We've typically set our millage rate at a special meeting in the third or sometimes last week of July. And at that time, we typically would have a draft budget, which understandably we don't have yet. So I have two suggestions. Either we postpone this resolution, which is not due at the county until first week of August,
I think it's August 4th.
for a special meeting, or if we go forward and approve the resolution at 9.7, because we could always go lower, that we at least have a workshop whereby the commission can get together and set some priorities, so that the administration, in preparing the budget, can take those into account, and then they'll be that far ahead, rather than wait to present a budget to us and we, are going to change it on the fly. We haven't had the opportunity to do that as a commission, and I think that it's important that we address this, because it'll save time and money in the end, and it'll give better direction to the administration. They don't have it from us.
Any other comments? Discussion?
No, just I'm in agreement with Commissioner Ross. I think we should have some priorities.
It's on, you just have to talk louder.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Ross. I think we need to have some priorities and goals set to present to the village manager, so that while they're working on the budget process, and we can get a more accurate picture of what we really need the millage rate set at. Because yes, ideally, we'd like to be able to lower the millage rate. My understanding is that, and I think the residents need to know that by keeping the millage rate at 9.7, it's in essence a tax increase on the residents. So what I'd like to do is have this meeting, have this discussion, set up some of these priorities, and then have the discussion on the millage rate maybe at that time.
I agree. You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a consensus to do so. Towards the end, we'll select the date if that's okay, or do you want to do that now for the special meeting?
Okay, we don't have a motion on the floor yet, right? Right. So, in order to avoid having a special meeting rather than a workshop environment, which is probably more appropriate for an open discussion of our priorities, I make a motion that we approve the tentative millage rate at 9.7 through this resolution. Separately, that we commit to having a set of workshop.
Okay, so the first motion on the floor is to accept the 9.7 millage, correct?
Approve the resolution at 9.7.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And so I'll announce, though, so the dates are going to be September 7th and September 21st at 6:30 PM at the Log Cabin for our public hearings. Thank you.
Yes.
So next, then, I would ask for consensus to pick a date to have a workshop to set priorities, and that we also try to engage someone either from the community or out of the community who could volunteer to serve as a facilitator in the discussion.
I'm not sure. I think, for me at this point, I just think we should make sure we set the date. At least start with that. I know we have our next meeting, and I agree with you that it should happen sooner than later, because if they're going to go ahead and put together a budget, it would be most helpful for them to know what the priorities of the commission are. I think we've all had individual discussions, but I think it's important that the community participate in the priorities. I know we've had discussions previously. We've had several community forum meetings, but I do think that we need to have the community involved in this. So I would just like to see the meeting, and that's picking a date and moving forward on that.
Okay. Well, with regard to the format, I think that we've had several community forums where residents have come and given us their ideas and thoughts on different topics, and I attended one or two of them. I didn't attend the most recent one. I was out of town, but I did hear the tape on it, every word, and I didn't hear a lot coming from the commission. I think that we've taken in everyone's comments, and the community and staff really need to hear from commission what we're going to get behind. And if we take up too much time just listening to community comment, which we've had lots of, and it's always welcome, and we can go meet people at Publix and at the rec center at different places and talk to them, we're not setting the priority. We're chewing up the time, and we are in July, and we haven't picked the first thing that we can agree to get behind.
Rox, at the last meeting, that forum that we had, we were told by the village clerk, we really couldn't put anything forward that we would all agree upon. It was not unless I misunderstood, It was not the venue for us to say, okay, we all agree upon this, what does everybody think?
To make a vote.
What? Not even to
You're
make a
not
vote,
able
but just to talk about it, say, hey, we're thinking about this, what are you thinking about? Is that correct
I'll
or
ask
not
the
correct?
attorney.
No, let me explain. You couldn't go ahead and put together an actual vote. So you could talk about like when each one of you spoke about an issue and so on and so forth. What you couldn't do was actually make a vote, because that's why you have the commission meetings. And at workshops, it's usually the commission that's having the workshop, not the public. The public is not engaging in a workshop. The public engages when there's a forum.
So in other words, we actually, each one of us could have said, that's something that I would actually go ahead with, I'd like
Sure.
that idea.
Yes.
Yeah, and-
That was maybe why I know I didn't say as much as I would have liked to.
Sure, but-
Because I was afraid of saying, oh my God, I'm making a decision and other people are also agreeing with me or not agreeing with me, and it wasn't the proper thing to do.
I wanted to protect each and every one of you to make sure there wouldn't be any kind of a sunshine violation. And that was why I was very careful on what was being said.
I just want to be clear from the attorney.
Yeah,
The
so-
best forum to do this would be what? I want your opinion.
Well, yeah, so to clarify what a workshop's for, it is a sunshine meeting.
Right.
But the clerk's right, there's no voting. However, you can absolutely say, I support these following 5 things, there's consensus, yes, let's move forward on those 5 things, but you're not voting. Doesn't count as a
Okay,
vote. That's the
that's-
key. in
So as long as we don't vote.
Right, so traditionally, and the clerk's right, workshops, and in many cities, workshops, actually, the public's not allowed to speak. We have done it differently here, because we're very open to the public, but certainly a workshop, you can have it just for the commission, you can have public participation if you would like. You can give all the direction in the world that you want, come to agreement.
Okay.
But it's not a vote, and so it doesn't count as a vote, it has to be done at a public meeting.
Okay, that's what I was really concerned about the agreeing part that we
Yeah,
all
you're in the
like
sunshine, you're
idea,
noticed,
but-
minutes are
Yeah.
taken, you can do everything up to the vote.
Okay.
Okay, so we're clear on that. So best forum in this case, special meeting, or in your recommendation, special meeting or
Well, now that you
workshop?
passed this resolution, which you had to have a vote, there's no need to have a meeting. The workshop, the idea of the workshop is a little less formal. You're spitballing your ideas and trying to get consensus. So workshop is
priorities.
Okay.
workshop's what cities do when they're trying to get their strategic priorities and.
Just want to confirm.
Yep.
Okay. So for a workshop, is there a motion on the floor to have a workshop to discuss priorities?
I make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Is there a second? And
We
then
need
all
a
those in
motion.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Just to get consensus on time, to just get it out of the way, would we like to do this on a Saturday? Do you want to do this in an evening? I know a lot of us go out of town in July, so I don't know if you want to do it sooner rather than later.
Can I propose July 25th?
I don't-
6:30?
I will not be in town.
What about the 30th? Is that a Saturday?
It's Sunday.
What about this, okay, whatever the Saturday is, the
20, you could do it the 22nd or the 29th.
Yeah.
Those are Saturdays.
Is everyone available July 20th?
Yes.
Yes. July 21st?
It's a Friday.
Yeah.
July 21st is a Friday?
Yes?
July 19th? It's a Wednesday?
Yes?
Did we say the 22nd was not a good day for somebody, or?
Me.
The 22nd's a Saturday.
Right,
If
that's
I'm
what
not
I'm talking
here,
about,
if I'm
Saturday.
not here, I'll relay it.
And the
I'll do it by
29th?
phone if I have to.
I'm not available.
Hmm?
I'm not available on either one.
The 22nd or the 29th?
Yeah.
The 19th looks good.
Excuse me, we can have somebody else take minutes, though?
Sure. It's up to the commission.
We don't really have anyone on staff that could, it's up to the manager. I don't think we have anyone on staff that could substitute.
We really don't have a
Okay.
substitute clerk at the moment, so.
Is anybody available on the 17th?
Yes.
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 Yes, Harvey?
When are we doing it on the,
17th at 6:30.
yeah, I can do it.
Okay, 17th at 6:30? Okay.
I've got house guests, let my wife take care of it.
I think we can move on to what a lot of people have been waiting for at this point is,
So we can do it at the rec center, we can do it somewhere else.
if we have to, can you work with that and see if we could move one or the other? Okay, thank you very much. We'll announce where that is so everybody knows which meeting is where and so forth. We're going to move on now to item 11B, which is the driveway ordinance guidelines for Commissioner Ross. That's her item. I'll
Wait
let her
one
go ahead and
second,
start.
please, before we move on. I know we were looking at a couple of dates that were more or less, I just want to keep a couple of dates just in case that 17 doesn't work. Can we look at the 19th? Did everybody say they were available on the 19th, which is a Wednesday?
I think we agreed the 17th actually does work.
No, I understand, but if we can't, for some reason, I just want to have some alternate dates because the planning and zoning is also meeting. So I was just trying to get some alternate dates.
Okay, but I mean, with P and Z meeting, we can still move the commission and that meeting to the rec center and have that there, so.
If it's available. Do we know?
I'm sorry?
Do we know that the rec center's available?
I can confirm that.
I just
don't
figured
know
if
right-
somebody at the moment here says yes and then figures out that no, that they're not available,
Okay.
at least we have a couple of alternatives. That's all I was
The
trying to do.
18th, we'll just do the next day, is the 18th? It's Tuesday.
That wouldn't work for me.
That won't work for you?
Okay.
19th?
19th will work.
19th's good.
19th's good?
I'll make it work.
Okay, so we've got two dates, at least the 17th and the 19th. I will confirm with all of you through email. And of course, it will be advertised and placed and posted and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we're going to move to 11B, driveway ordinance. I'm going to let Commissioner Ross, this is her item, to start it.
Okay, this is not my proposed ordinance. It's not my item at all. It's just, I was trying to usher a solution to some of the challenges that we faced when we implemented the ordinance in 2015 for some, first of all, there was some confusion, and there's a memo from the village attorney outlining those issues. As staff was implementing the ordinance, they came across some challenges. There was a dispute whether development of the swale was going to be allowed going forward or not allowed going forward. There's one paragraph which precedes most of the changes that took place in 15 that says you can have 40% impervious pavers in the swale, which wasn't really considered at the time that the rest of the driveway issue was being discussed. And so back in March, I brought to the commission the current code, the ordinance that was passed in 15, and what staff prepared in synthesizing the current code and what was being proposed. I brought that forward sort of to bring the current commission up to speed on where we were, and I should point out that those the ordinance in 2015 and the ordinance in 2016 were the product of our code review board and our village attorney, and then after discussion here at the commission. So none of this is my product. I didn't come up with it. It was a completely joint effort after over 30 meetings of hashing this out, and that was what was formulated. Essentially, and I regret that we didn't do it in 2015, but essentially the goal was to have no more development in the swale. And there are people who are still against it, but that was, the first goal was to have cars parked on a parking surface, not to have cars parked on the dirt, not to have cars parked on anything than what was an approved surface, and the design of it was created by the code review board and the commission. Some people tell me now the Code Review Board didn't create that language. All I could tell you is what came to us were the minutes, their votes up or down on things, and then the proposed language that they brought forward. So I have no pride in authorship here, but I am trying to find a resolution to some of the conflicting terms. When we last brought it to the former commission last year, and it was up for a second reading, it was voted down. 2 commissioners thought it was too stringent. 1 commissioner thought it didn't go far enough because it didn't really account for, or he would prefer to have totally impervious materials, not to allow, I'm sorry, totally pervious materials, so the water percolates through, not to allow development that would prevent water from percolating through. One of the other things that was proposed in that ordinance that last year was to allow for a certain amount of grandfathering in, so that meeting certain conditions, people could keep what they had in place, but in all events, there would have to be a parking surface on private property. And then it also allowed for, and we didn't call it a variance on purpose, we called it a special exception, so as to make it distinct from a variance process, where in certain situations where a property, and typically it's an older home that either has a very short swale, or maybe has a mature tree, or maybe has a septic drain field in the front yard that would prevent developing a parking surface on the private property, to then allow, as a last resort, to have the swale developed to a certain extent in order to allow for parking. One of the things that we spoke of, but it never got down on paper, was the question of pervious versus impervious. And I propose it even now with whatever we're going to go forward with. Is the question only a matter of percolation, or is the question to preserve green space? And many other cities I came across, including Miami Shores, when they do their calculation, their 60-40 or whatever the numbers are, they count all development so that it is developed area versus green space. And I urge that we consider whichever way we go to look at it from that perspective, not necessarily just the percolating down of water, but also keeping lush space, sort of keeping the streets narrow, because that deters people going very rapidly, very fast down the streets. And so that's what I proposed, and I don't know if you've read all the materials, but I appreciate, Mayor Truppman, that you've taken a lot of time in recrafting an ordinance, and there's some very good things in there, some definitions that we didn't have before, but I'd be very cautious to proceed with something that may not be enforceable. You know, I'd rather have our attorney have a thorough review of things before we jump on something that may not be as effective as we first think.
I'm going to agree on several items, which is, one, I'm not married to anything that's in there or the language. What I did was spend 3 weeks running around trying to understand why the need was in the first place, and if there was a need for the ordinance at all, and if so, where we currently stand on the ordinance and what had to be fixed. When I did this, I had an eye-opening experience. I think if you lived in certain parts of the park, you don't even understand why we're having a conversation and why there's been so much time taken on this. I think if you live in other areas, you cannot wait for us to get this done and can't believe we've taken this long. And I'm not going to get into which areas those are. You can drive around the park and see them yourself. We have numerous issues, but they're not just parking surface issues. They're where you're parking, how you're parking, how many cars you have parked, whose area of swale you're parking on. That's not, we don't own the swale, so I can have, 8 cars and my neighbors parked on my swale. I can have somebody park and leave their car there for 48 hours because their car broke down. There's a lot of issues that pop up that maybe it doesn't impact you individually, but it's impacting someone in the village. And I must tell you, I learned more about swales, parking, and driveway surfaces than I ever anticipated ever wanting to know. When I did this, I came up with concepts that I wanted. And I spoke to the attorney, and we chatted a couple of times on this issue. And I'm not married to language, I'm married to concepts. And what I mean by that is I want to talk about building commonality before we move forward. I'm not rushing this through. Today I didn't make an ordinance so that we push it through today and we're done. I just want to make sure everybody in the village is on the same page as what we can and cannot do. Regarding swale parking and managing swale parking, there are the positives of managing it and the negatives of managing it. I live on 116th, so I'll talk personally. We have a 15-foot wide street. In order for 2 cars to pass, a parking space on a public right-of-way, most streets, they request in cities to be 36 feet wide, which includes for a bike lane. We're sitting at 12 and 15. Minimally, 2 cars passing require 10 feet on each side. So that's 20 cars for 2 cars to pass. Every single day, driving up and down 116th, anybody who lives there, I know there's several in the audience who do, and it's not just 116th, there are other streets. In order to pass, you must drive on somebody else's property. There's no other way to get by. And if we're really nice and kind and there happens to be swale developed parking, somebody pulls over in somebody's driveway, right? Or in somebody's swale parking, and they are able to pass. And that's usually what happens. I'm not opposed to swale development for that reason. It's a safety issue. But at the same time, if you look at swale development, if somebody's pulled in, I think there's one incident of a construction worker who dropped off a dumpster, kind of looked like a giant truck. It has sightline issues. If you put a truck in the swale, it has sightline issues if you're not 3 feet back and somebody wants to get off the road. So there are problems with swale parking that have to be addressed if we continue to move in that direction. At the same time, if somebody's lived in their house for 25 years, they've never had a problem, why are we suddenly going to impose a cost on a homeowner that doesn't have a problem? So I tried to find common ground where everybody would be happy. So my solution is some of you will be happy, some of you won't, and that's how it'll be because there is no perfect solution. Having said that, I developed, and I'm going to ask it be projected, if you don't mind, the concepts, the one I sent to you in email. And if there's a couple more, I think we had some spares. If you could give them out to the audience for those people who are still here, you can come up and get one. Instead of the language that's in the ordinance, what I first wanted to do was ask all the commissioners if we could build consensus together, all 5 of us, on what we agree. I basically took everything out of what was written and put it out in terms of simple terms, not legal language, so everybody can be on the same page. For those of you who don't have a copy, we're going to go ahead and put it up on the I mailed it to you. Yeah. If you can you manage to do that?
Let me see.
Okay.
Sure. Give me a second.
I sent it to her. I didn't send it to everybody.
Oh, no, I'm saying you email it to her again.
You want me to email it to you again? I sent
No,
it.
give me a second.
Okay.
Let me see if I have it here.
So with this, what I did, and everybody has a copy, correct? I took what was in the language that I wrote, and by the way, I changed the language before today after speaking to a couple residents that pointed out some very important parts to me, and I was off on, so I fixed them. So what's in there now and what's in there in my current version isn't there. So rather than go through all that, I figured I'd summarize it to a single page, so we can actually get through the night, hopefully. The first concept was off-street parking. Do we agree that off-street parking surfaces should be developed prior to development of new swale parking when possible, or prior to or in conjunction with enhanced existing swale parking, and that all surfaces must comply with the design standards outlined? What that means in English is, if I can simplify it, is if right now, let's see if I can do this simply. Good.
Are you saying that if right now you don't have a driveway on your property, this is what 1A
Yes,
address?
you will have to put in a driveway. If you, for some reason, need a driveway and part of a swale, you can do that. Okay, we're not going to prevent you from doing that. But first, the first priority is at least have some parking on your property. Because in reality, I've seen a lot of properties where people are parking all over the swale and they've got plenty of land to pull the cars in. They're just not doing it. And that didn't seem fair, especially when some of the cars were really abutting the road quite close and there wasn't even a 3-foot setback. So the ideal is that you first want to try and do something on your property. okay? Because that's fair. But on the other hand, if you don't have enough room on your property, okay, or you just need more parking spaces because you have a bigger family, that you can develop your swale parking, okay? It doesn't take that right away. So that was the first. The second was vehicles, residents, or visitors must park on approved surface when parking on the property. So I'm not talking the swale here, I'm talking the property. I must tell you, I was shocked to see the number of cars that either enjoy parking under a tree or move because they have a tree over their parking, their driveways. Most of it is, I want shade, so I'll just pull in the middle of my yard, okay? And we have a lot more of that than you would think. Exceptions would be allowed for special events. I want to be clear. We don't have street parking. By taking away swale parking, in reality, what you're doing is you're saying somebody is going to park somewhere, and usually it's on your neighbor's lawn, okay, or on the median, or you may need to do that anyway. So the idea is that if you're having a special event, or there's a holiday party, and if you're going to park, and it's usually national holidays, there's a moratorium. You guys can park in the medians. Your friends can come over and do that. We're not going to penalize you for that. But first, try and get everybody on your property before you do overflow parking into a median. And if you damage it, you're responsible for it.
Tracy?
Yes.
Got a question. I thought C actually meant you could park on a non-approved surface. So if I've got a lawn and I've got a party, I can have people park on my lawn.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Here is the difference, and I tried to make a distinction, and don't bear with me on the numbers. We can play with the numbers later. But the idea is that if you're going to be parked on, let's say you have somebody who doesn't have enough parking, and they're an older person, they've got a nurse coming in 12 hours a day to help them out, but there's no more parking that they have. You can park on the grass for 12 hours. Nobody's going to bug you, okay? And this is, for 12 hours. For a special holiday or something. So it's, the argument is whether you want to have a 12 hours, 6 hours, how frequent it is. Those are things we can negotiate that's reasonable. But if you have a special event or a holiday and you have to park first on your property, that means on your grass, okay, on your swale, before you hit the medians, okay? That was another piece. And this is not every day. This is holidays. How many of you have parties? Some of you have friends over. Maybe you have your family over once a week, and you need to find a place to park them because you have 4 cars and you only have spaces for 4. You're going to have to find a place to put that visitor. But here's the catch. If you mess up the grass, I don't care where it is, you have to fix it. If you're doing this regularly and you're rutting the ground and it's a permanent parking, you're going to have to get a surface. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Those are the first 3. I'll keep going to the rest of them, and then we can argue over any one you want. Swale parking must be on approved surface for permanent resident parking, non-visitor. So if you're going to park on your swale every day, in and out every day, you need a surface. Okay? Temporary visitor parking may be on unapproved surfaces, swale, but not regularly. And then I'm not even married to the language here. The idea is that if you're going to park regularly on your swale, whether you're visitor or permanent, and you rut up that swale, you have to put a surface on it. Of some kind. Pervious preferred. Okay? Vehicles and new or improved swale parking should have sufficient setback of 3 feet to assure pedestrian safety. I don't know if you know, but a parallel parking space is 9 to 10 feet on a road, which means nobody can get out of the way. If you've ever parked in Miami Beach or pulled in one of those spots, they're usually 19 by 9 or 20 by 10. So the idea is to have at least 3 feet. And let me be clear on the swales. You have duplexes that pull in frontwise. You have other people that pull in this way. And you have other duplexes mostly that pull in diagonally to get off the road. So there's a lot of different configurations we currently already have. The idea is just to make sure once that swale deteriorates, and they have to put in a new surface, that they pull it back another 3 feet just to make sure there's off so people cannot, with strollers and so forth, don't get injured. Okay? The other one that I put in was specific because we have some new issues coming in the park. And I'm going to see if I can just not go into this too much, but property owners should have control of their swale. And what I mean by that is if you have to pay it to maintain it, put surfaces in, that somebody can't come and park in front of your swale without your permission. This will help with what I would call people who are utilizing your swale on a regular basis because they have activities that are parking heavy. I know of several spots where this occurs, and I get a lot of complaints from those residents of what can I do about it, and right now I have to say, not a gosh darn thing. Okay? It may not happen to you, but it is happening to other people. The exception would be, of course, police vehicles, utility vehicles, anybody who's working for the city can use any part of the right-of-way, period. That's not going to change. The other thing is it cannot exceed 40%, your swale paving cannot exceed 40% of the swale if constructed of impervious materials, period. If you're going to put down concrete, even brick is impervious, you can only have 40% of the swale. For most 75-foot lots, that's 30 feet, just to give you an idea, which is a car and a half, which doesn't really help you. 20 feet is all you need for one vehicle. If you want 2 spaces and you live on a corner lot and you've got the land, or you live on Griffin and you've got a bigger, wider property, you can get probably up to 2 spaces if you do 40%, usually. I'm just giving you, and that's about 40 feet by 12, which the 12 would allow you that 3-foot setback.
Can I interject?
Sure.
A question? So I think that what we're doing, and what I have seen happen because of the way we express this pervious, impervious, is that a lot of people are using gravel because it's impervious. So a lot of people, have been several permits that put impervious material in the entire length of the swale.
Correct.
Because it doesn't fit into it's not calculated in the 60/40. And number one, it's not ADA compliant. People in a wheelchair can't get off the side, can't get off the street and go to the side to get away from traffic. It actually doesn't even, after a while, it's not even pervious because of the heaviness and the trafficking on it. So I wouldn't want to see us, continue on that path of allowing for swales to be developed fully because they're impervious.
If you use geotextiles, I don't disagree. And I did a lot of research on, well, not a lot, but I did some research on what materials last longer. There's a reason why you pay more for the heavier materials. They last longer, and they also drain better. When you use gravel, unless you use geotextile material underneath, it doesn't sufficiently drain sometimes. And so the other thing is they require higher maintenance. So I like to say, pay me now, pay me later. So depending on, but we do have people that cannot afford to put in beautifully brick-laid pavers. So the question is, are we going to impact a large number of people that may not be afford this? And then what type of gravel we should have? These are all things we can discuss. In the ordinance that I wrote, I made it so that you can't have this giant limestone rock that gets all over the place and that has to be basically no more than a ½ inch in size, and it kind of looks like the Keys. We have several properties that have a lot of trees, and so when they go to try and have understory, it doesn't work anyway. So this is their solution. There are other people that just do it because it's cheap, okay? So we may be able to tighten up design standards to make it at least look nice. And I think that's part of the concern aesthetically. The other concern I had was if I have a driveway made out of one material, I don't like to see the swale made out of a different material aesthetically. That's a personal thing that I put in there because I thought that was not appropriate. Okay? Do you want me to continue? You got more comments?
No, I'll leave. My thought just just going off of what Commissioner Rox was saying is that maybe, and I think you touched on it too, is maybe if we look at what materials are going through a price range and if we can set those for the swale parking so that we don't have the issue of, well, they just read it as impervious, rather than using the word impervious or
in the ordinance, there are very specific things, and it's in the ordinance. It talks about bricks. I can open it up. It's bricks. It's from memory. Concrete bricks, pavers, turf block. Am I missing something, Rox? Commissioner Ross? It's pavers, brick, concrete, turf block, and then gravel. And then the gravel material.
Asphalt.
Oh, and then asphalt was permitted in one version and not in the other. And the idea was that, and the reason I took it out, and I went back and forth on this several times, was that even though it's a very inexpensive material, it has been proven in the park not to be maintained, with few exceptions. However, if you had asphalt, what I put in was that you can, as long as you maintain it and it's not completely gone, you could continue to maintain it until such time that you change it. So there's not a requirement to change it if you have it already, but it would not be allowed as a new material. I put that.
There is such a thing as pervious asphalt, so if we maintain the line as pervious, impervious, someone can develop their entire swale with pervious asphalt.
Right, but I'm saying in the language that was written in what was proposed, I didn't have that in there. There's also pervious concrete. It's more expensive, but there is pervious concrete as well. Okay. I'm laying some groundwork so that we can decide together what we agree or don't agree on conceptually.
I guess then what we should add, if we're going to decide about the swale parking, because of this whole issue of pervious and impervious, is how much of the swale is going to be developed for parking, because if we're falling into the trap, if we're using the language impervious and then the whole swell gets developed with this impervious material, then I think that should be in front of us to decide what's the consensus of the commission as to how much of the swell will be turned into parking.
I guess also another issue is, I know I'm part of my house, and there are a lot of other houses that are the same way. If you have trees over your swale, nothing's going to grow. So what do? You put gravel in?
I think
I
think there's a difference between using stone or gravel for design and landscaping to take the place of grass that doesn't grow under
Right.
shade. And speaking of how many parking spaces you're going to have in the
Right.
swell. Like if we say, okay, we'll allow one parking space in the swell or 2 parking spaces in the swell, I think we need to tighten the language so it doesn't, and going off of this impervious word, if we keep that and the person just, if it's the impervious asphalt and they asphalt the whole swale, I think is different than what we're talking about here.
In the design standards in both, they specify the materials. They were very specific on the materials, just so it wasn't just called impervious. It was specific materials that would be utilized with the understanding that would kind of help with the design piece. What was left open was the gravel. And this is where I went back and forth a bunch of times. First, on the original one that I sent out that you all have, it's the 20 by 40 space and yada, yada. But then I came back and I said, okay, and I looked at several properties that had all gravel. They had all sorts of beautiful design and landscaping in it, and it wasn't problematic for me. And then I was like, well, am I going to dictate to the homeowner that they can or cannot have gravel and then at the end of the day, they can still put it on there, they just can't park there? It seemed like it was a bit of micromanagement from my perspective, so I backed off that in the last rendition I did. Because I think most people will have a classic driveway. I just don't think that many people are going to opt to gravel their entire place unless they have an issue where they can't grow anything underneath. I can tell you that I looked at other ordinances, and they wanted a lot of green space and grass, and so what they did is they actually made no more rock than a certain percentage. So there are compromises that can be made, but I do think if we just choose to allow gravel parking, okay, I think we have to be careful, not only that it not goes out in the road, because every place I went that didn't have borders, it was all over the place, except for one. Okay, so that's a problem with gravel. I was raised on a gravel driveway, and I must tell you, as a 16-year-old, I sure like to speed in and watch it go. After a while, you make ruts in the driveway, and they have to maintain them, and it is harder to maintain in the sense of making it always look nice. It's not easy. So we can discuss what materials you want to allow or not allow. I'm not, as I said, there's no one right answer. There's just what we're going to all agree on this.
I believe for the approach of driveways in the ordinance, it allowed gravel construction from the property line to the roadway.
Which version?
In not your version and the one that we have now.
Yeah, I think it does too.
Yeah. With an apron, yeah. And I guess maybe we could be a little more stringent about what we want, because we're allowing people to develop the property that's not actually theirs, it's the village's.
Yeah, and
so maybe just a little nicer, maybe. I'm not sure what
I'd like it to match personally,
Yeah.
and I think I want to make something very clear. The idea is that, and the way I thought this was from a very, I heard a lot of residents say, it's my swale. Sorry guys, It's not. It's the city's. It's there for a multitude of reasons. If tomorrow we decided we wanted to widen the streets and we had unlimited funding to do so, we could say, okay, the street's too narrow, we're taking 3 feet back. And you spend all this money landscaping, and the answer is sorry. Okay? So the reality is there is a relationship between the homeowner and the city that we're trying to establish this balance between. And my thoughts are, is if you're going to have to spend the money to maintain it, take care of it, landscape it, or pave, or put in parking services, the least we could do, my carrot back the other direction, is that, and I talked to the attorney about this, is that the homeowner can say who parks there with the exception of all city municipal and emergency vehicles. So the idea is that there's a motivation to want to do it, okay, and improve your swale and improve your how it looks. And the other thing that I really liked that Janie had said earlier was the idea that we can also now find a way to protect the swale by using vegetation, maybe a 2-foot hedge, something on the side that when somebody takes a corner, they're not taking out your swale, and if somebody has to jump off the road, they're not going to be miserably hurt over it by getting stabbed or impaled by something else. And so I must tell you that I did way too much thinking about this clearly, but the idea was that we'd find some balance there for the homeowner. And as far as how much swale to allow parking, whether you want 1 space or 2 spaces, I will tell you that on a 75-foot lot, which is the majority of lots we have here, 1 space is 20 feet. 40% is 30 feet. It doesn't really help you because you only can fit 1 car on it anyway, okay, unless you're putting a motorcycle, okay? Any giant corner lot can probably take 2 spaces, which is about 40 feet.
Can I just, to touch on that, because the good news is, since we've been talking about driveways, a lot of people have put in driveways. A lot of properties have been improved with driveways. And when we got this survey that they did the year before and revised it last year, we were told that there were 69 properties that didn't have driveways or only had swale parking or had nothing at all. And I took the time to go through, I even tasked Chuck to go through and visit these 69 properties. A lot of them have been improved. So today we are left with, there are 20 properties that have no driveway or swale parking. So they
That's
have
it?
no,
That's it?
yeah.
Okay.
And there are 12 properties that have no driveway but have an improved swale. So that we're only talking about 32, and of course there are a bunch of properties that have deteriorated driveways.
I was about to say that number's quite higher.
And we didn't count those because those are not in compliance with any code.
And I will tell you, that was the one piece that I kind of was shocked about when I went to look around the village, as to how many they call them driveways. I don't know what these things are, but they're a little bit of asphalt and some rock thrown in, there's nothing left of them. So they'll have to be put on that list to put on a new driveway surface. And I don't think that's a bad thing. They've let them go beyond 50%. I mean, they're way over. I'm not talking about asphalt that have cracks in it and things like that. I'm talking about the people that just have nothing left of the driveways. They're remnants of a driveway. The other thing that I talked about, and I'm gonna, if I may just go through this, I am sorry for taking so much time up tonight, is the 3 is the special exception. Every single property here in the village that doesn't meet that setback standard or has some other issues, I will tell you that there's kind of a couple problems that you see. Usually you have properties that are 2-1s that converted their carport or blocked it off and they don't want to pull in anymore. You have a 2-1 that got converted to a 3-1 with the same situation, so they have no parking, okay? And so you do have properties now that under their current configuration have difficulties trying to make an off-street parking space. And it would look kind of like some of those duplexes. If you paved them, they'd all look like concrete. And I don't think we'd want that. So there has to be special exceptions for special circumstances. The properties, and I already talked about deterioration, so we kind of already did that. The other issue is we have a lot of construction going on in the village. So we have a lot of properties that are increasing their square footage. It's a great way to increase property values, increase tax base, but it creates parking problems if the parking isn't designed as part of that increase in square footage. And right now, it's not really tied to it. And I'll give you an example. There is a duplex that was increased. It's now, it went from I think a 4-2 on the tax rolls. It's now a 5-2. It's a 2-1 and a 3-1. There's a giant tree where parking used to be, and it's a big tree. And right now, they'll be lucky if they can fit 2 cars on it. My understanding is previously the people who lived there when it was even a 2, I think it was a 2-2 and a 2-1, they had parking all over everybody's swale every single day. And I got a panic call over it saying, what are we going to do about it? And the answer is we don't have anything right now that prevents them from doing it because everybody can park on the swale. Make sense? Okay. The last couple things are kind of what I would call the more controversial ones. We had in that ordinance a minimum number of spaces required, which does one thing in the fact that it makes you have a parking surface. What it doesn't really do is make you have sufficient parking surface, because somebody who buys the house after you, who only has 2 parking spaces, says, okay, I'm going to need to develop that afterwards. That's not usually what happens. What usually happens is they park on the swale, they park on the grass, and you have situations like this. And I think that's where it got a little challenging for me. Also, we have some people in the park that just like their vehicles a lot. There was one house I counted 15 cars. Okay, it was a duplex. And I talked to the code enforcement officer, and recently some of them declined, which I was very happy about because they used the storage car piece to help them remove them. But we also had another homeowner, it's a single-family home, that I counted 8. Okay? And somebody says, well, I don't care, anybody can have whatever they want. It sounds nice until you have to live across from it or next to it, and the cars sit there. We also have a lot of cars, which we have ordinances for now, that if the grass is growing through them and the tires are flat, we can do something about that. But if you have really nice cars and you want to have a lot of cars, this doesn't preclude you from having a garage and having more cars. The idea was, do we have a max number? And I went through all the bedrooms, I went through other ordinances, I ended up in Canada, Winnipeg, to see if anybody else had an ordinance that had a max number of cars. I found nothing in the United States, in all fairness, and nothing in Florida, that tried to not regulate how many cars you own, but how many cars you could have in a given small area. Okay, so the idea was, should we have a max? Because if you don't have a max, what are you really saying? That you're going to have to enforce a parking surface. And that becomes very challenging code-wise. Also, the elephant in the room is we have some people who have had some interesting internal reconfigurations of their property. And they have a lot more people living there and a lot more bedrooms than is currently on the tax rolls. And so they have a lot more cars. And there's anything we can really do about that. If you maximize the number of cars, that's going to minimize that situation. And that is an interesting issue for the village. Okay, because they don't pay the services that you're paying. They have more garbage, they have more trash, and they're not paying. And I think that's a more difficult situation to address. And we've had a lot of these over the years, but I think it's increasing. And the amount of unpermitted work that goes on as a result of that is also increasing. And I think it provides a challenge for us moving forward. And one could argue whether or not we should go there, but I think we should. So the issue is minimum spaces and maximum cars. This is what I proposed. You can decide what that number is. I had 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, had 4 cars. Somebody said that's not enough. I had most of the houses, I had 6 cars. I think 6 cars for any home is probably enough. If I'm at a 2-1, I don't know where you're going to park 6 cars unless it's in the back of your house. And I don't know if we want to have parking in backs of houses. So and I'm not trying to micromanage as much as I was trying to solve some of the car blight issue. And by the way, we are not alone. There are cities all over the country with these problems. They've studied them, and they'll tell you that they're very difficult to solve. Okay? So I tried to solve them for better or for worse. I came up with some ideas. We can decide what you want to do with them. And finally, the last 2 were the issue of what material to use, asphalt and limestone, and how to deal with that. That's just the material. We can go through that. And the last one is landlords should be required to provide enough permanent parking spaces on approved surfaces for their tenants that they are renting to. That is a problem in the village right now in many areas. And they also have to have some sort of visitor parking. And that kind of summarizes everything. Thank you for listening for a very long-winded summary.
It is up now, finally.
Huh? Oh, thank you.
John, can we limit the number of cars that somebody can have on their property?
So we live in a common law country, and so you'd have to look at your case law to see what's been decided. I have not, the mayor has done extensive research. I have not, because I need to get direction from this commission before I do
Right.
excessive research on anything to make sure I'm not wasting village money. So it may be the case of first impression. If there's support for it, I will look at it further, and I have a server that have city attorneys throughout the country. I can ask that and look at that. But what you do have the right to do is protect the character, the integrity, and the intensity of your residential zoning and land use. So
Could you expand a little bit on that? Because I think that I didn't go through that with you, but I did talk to the attorney about that quite extensively over what the issues were, was turning a single-family home, a residential neighborhood, into a more commercial rental type area, and that is really where a lot of the issues are coming from.
So you're right. So you regulate based on the health, safety, welfare, public purpose. So if we could articulate, and we've started to do that, I believe, because if you do have 15 cars in a residential zoning, you are really taking the residential zoning and making it something else. And that's why, for example, we have a home occupation permit, and in there, you're not allowed to have, or it's severely limited, I think you're not allowed to have any clients come, because you're going to have clients come, home business, now all of a sudden it's really, that should be in a commercial area.
Right.
So you would need to look at, I can tell you that this issue would also be helpful in many situations that we have in other cities, especially if you have, like Coral Gables is an example, as is Davie, where there are homes that it's alleged that there are, it's really a dorm, or it's really, everyone, they're renting out the single bedrooms for college kids. And so regulating the cars is a way to look at that. And again, the one thing that helps mitigate this is the special exception. So, hey, you could have a family that had quintuplets, they all turned 16, there's 5 cars. And you're like, well, that's over the number because it's 7 cars with the adults, and they come in and they show, hey, it's all registered to family members. Well, that would seem to be a very good argument that, hey, they're in a single-family house, they're just a large family. If they're all registered to adults that are unrelated, definition of family as well, then you can regulate that at some level. So it's first important to see if you want to do that.
And I will tell you, there is...
But there is no case law on it that I'm aware of, and I'm aware of no ordinances. So there's always a risk, frankly, but you base it on public health, safety, welfare reasons. Sorry, Mary.
And I will tell you that we are having situations in the village where people rent out, and not just one room. They're reconfiguring the inside to make them into rentals. And so there's a live and let live, and then there's, okay, how far do we want to take this? And I think we need to find that balance. And I think that's why the landlord-tenant thing came about, because people, I was torn over this because I really tend to be the live and let live, but the more I looked into it and the more I see some of the properties and the condition of many of the properties that we're talking about, the more I realized there had to be something that was regulating this so that we can do something other than just property maintenance. Because at the end of the day, if the use is not a residential use and it's being used for other things, and a great example was we have an Airbnb, and I know that's a big controversial issue, but we had 150 kids bust in to come for a pool party. Other people who are sitting in this audience live next to an Airbnb, and they can tell you it is challenging at best. Okay, so we are kind of morphing into a legislative battle with the state on Airbnbs, some other issues of how we're converting structures to make them less like single-family homes. The definition of family is changing. So we do have challenges, and I was trying to find a way to at least keep the character and the intent and the integrity of the village the same by maximizing the amount of cars, because that seemed to be the easiest way to do that. I didn't say I loved it either, but I'm telling you, I found it very difficult otherwise, because you cannot go onto somebody's property, even if you're told and even if you know that that's going on, unless it's in plain sight. It is very difficult to prove and very difficult to enforce.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah. So I'm disinclined to enact something that is difficult to enforce. My goal with the parking surface and the ordinances supporting that was so that it doesn't impact, so that a house, a property with many cars doesn't have that overflow impact to the street and to the neighbors.
Right.
I would feel better about saying the maximum number of vehicles visible from the street or something like that. So, I mean, you have if you have a home with 3 bedrooms, 2 parents have a business, they have a pickup truck they use for business, they have their private cars that they use, their kid goes to college, the kid has a car. So that's 5 vehicles. Are you going to also include, if they have a motorhome that's parked behind the face of their house, they're entitled to have that?
No, and I think I wanted to be clear on that, maybe I wasn't. The idea of the 6 vehicles is if you have, there's a place here that has 4-car garage. If they want another 6 vehicle, they have 10. Whatever the number is, and I'm not fixed to a number. I'm really not. But I do think you have to have a number. And that's not unrealistic. If you talk to realtors or other people, there's a certain amount of cars per space that when you build a home, you build a building, any engineer will tell you there's an assumption you're going to put a certain amount of parking surface in there. The fact that we have an older community that has not done that, and we're trying to find a way to deal with the parking issue and the other issue is, and this is where I really struggled, we need the parking. So by not developing the swales and making it only off-street and only on somebody's property, you really create a problem in some of these narrow streets. So there's some benefit to swale parking, you know. So I went back and forth in this, and I must tell you that we can only manage this to some degree. We're never going to have a community that's going to be perfect for everything. However, I do think we need to address car blight, overpopulation density through car regulation to some degree, in a gross setting, not in a micromanaging setting, but in a context that is max number of vehicles for a given space. If I have a 2-1, does anybody think you should have 8 or 9 cars sitting there? Is that realistic? And so I think there's a square footage area on a frontage at 75 foot wide. Now, if you can say, I think I have the right, and this is another interesting argument that was made, was do I have, as a property owner, have the right to have as many cars as I want to have? And the answer is yes, you do. You can own as many things as you want. Correct? You can own as many houses as you want, you can own as many cars as you want, but does that give you the right to park on everybody else's swale so that you can have that privilege? And when I say everybody else's swale, it's the city's swale, but it impacts everybody by doing that. So I think there has to be a balance.
I mean, I'm sitting here brainstorming while we're discussing this. Now, it's a couple of things that we would need to address. Your first topic of whether or not that property owner for the right-of-way that's pertinent to their property being able to regulate who parks on that swale besides a city vehicle. Then the next issue is, as it is right now, or in our discussions, whatever ordinance we're looking at, there's a certain percentage of the property, of your private property, that you can develop with a parking surface. 40. It's the 40%. So if we regulate the size of a parking surface and how many cars fit on that parking surface, not allowing, I don't know, depending on how people drive in on their parking surface, whether or not they crowd their vehicles and they're getting more cars on a surface than is actually the parking space. So there's a difference between a parking space and how many cars someone parks.
Yes.
Yes, there is. So if there's ways to tweak that language so that in a way, sort of around the corner, we're regulating how many cars you can fit on a parking surface, rather than out and out telling residents you're allowed to have X amount of cars as a maximum. Or maybe even exploring what Commissioner Rocks just said, a certain number of cars visible so that it makes people use their garages if they have them for additional parking.
Jenny, I think, well, the ordinance does say it's 40% non-permeable.
Right.
Well, if you need 50% of your front yard for parking, well, 40% of it's non-permeable, but the rest can be permeable.
Right.
That takes care of part of it. I know I was thinking about in my house, putting in a circular driveway. If I put a circular driveway, I could probably park 6 or 7 cars on there. I'm not gonna park 6 or 7, I can. So we can't tell people, you can't limit the number of spaces that are available. You just can limit the number of cars. There's somebody on Griffin, guy's done a great job, he can park 12 cars. Never gonna park 12 cars, and he's got a 2-car garage besides.
Right.
So I think you can't limit the number of spaces somebody has, but you probably could, to maintain the look of the neighborhood, limit the number of cars. I think also if people have a duplex, or they are renting, or the house is a multifamily, whatever it is, you can't rent space to somebody and not have a sufficient number of parking spaces for the cars these people have.
And thus lies the dilemma. Not to be invasive to somebody's personal rights to own and do things, and balancing the fact that how that impacts somebody you're living next to. At one point, I had 12 people living in a home that clearly wasn't supposed to, and there were, on average, every piece of the swale, everything that was done. And the other thing that I found very interesting was even if you regulate the parking surface and you tell somebody they have to park on it, the challenge then is, what happens when they don't? I can tell you there are a lot of people, and I know there's people in this audience who know this, that do not park on the surface. They have this beautiful driveway. Well, some of them are beautiful, some of them are not. But they have a driveway, and guaranteed every single day, they are not parked on it. And so what are you going to do? Have the code enforcement officer cannot put a sticker on the car, they have to post, the only thing they're allowed to do is post a courtesy notice or a notice of violation, depending, on the door, okay? And then until you accumulate fines, and then they keep doing it, it becomes an implementation nightmare. By limiting the number of cars, that's a one-time deal, and then you're not doing it every single time. But it doesn't solve the parking off the surface. I will tell you, no matter what regulation we pass, that's a tough one to really, truly get under control, because unlike the medians, we can't stick an orange sticker on the, I already asked. I said, can we stick an orange sticker on the window? And the answer was, no, we cannot do that. So it's a challenge.
Okay, John, do we have to have certain wording in here so our police can actually give somebody a parking ticket for parking on the swale?
Swale, yes, right? But driveway,
Yeah,
no.
well, the swale's public property. The police can enter there. They can't enter into your.
But they can, in
curtilage.
fact, do it on swale? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a right of way.
Yeah. I remember one of my neighbors posted on Nextdoor, and I had to look at it. She had somebody parked in front of her house in her little parking area for 7 hours. Oh, and the person said, oh, well, I just parked there because I had some errands to do. But it took because she was worried. She was a single woman. Said, oh my God, where are these people? What are they doing? How come they parked in front of my house? And her house, the swale is like only 3 feet wide, so they were parked on her property.
This has happened to me numerous times.
Yeah. So
And for months on edge. And every time it's not yours.
I think as far as having people park on the driveway, they're going to get enough citations. Every time they do it, it's another violation.
Yeah, that's an enforcement issue.
So, and that's
They're not parking on a driveway.
every single day they get it? Every single day
But
they
if
do
you
it?
have an improved surface and you put a swale parking in your surface, the only thing you can do is put another car in it or something in it to stop somebody else from parking in it, because in reality, anybody can park in your swale. And I have the privilege of that.
Yeah.
But if we pass this, that would
Right,
not happen
right.
anymore. You'd be able to call the police and they'd be able to ticket or tow, or depending on how we dealt with it.
Right, and it would be a unique restriction to do because it's public, so we need to look at that further, but what we have in our ordinance now, you have a requirement, if you're the adjoining property owner, to maintain it.
Right.
And if you're gonna pay for the asphalting of it, we also have an identification you have to give us, the city, because it's our property.
Right.
Which is in
So-
the, which is in the ordinance.
Which is in the ordinance, so part of that agreement may be more two-way, maybe that they have the, and for safety reasons, and get with the chief on that too, because there is safety concerns with strange cars parked in front of homes. Police don't know why it's there, so it would be a safety enhancement as well, to make sure that if there's a parking in a swale adjacent to a home, that it's the adjacent homeowners, and then the license can see that. So there's ways we can
Okay.
look into developing that, if that's what the commission wants to do.
Can we regulate people parking in their backyard? Let's say somebody has a duplex and they have room in their backyard, and we allow them 6 cars in their front yard, and they have parking space in the back. Can they park in the back?
If it's not on an approved surface,
No,
that
it's
would
on
be
an
the
approved
question?
surface, I guess, or,
Yeah, we can look at that, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's been an issue that we've ever.
I don't think it's been an issue, but I'm saying, so this would.
I already
this
looked
would
at that
solve the
issue. We have
problem.
about, I saw about 3 is all I noticed.
Yeah, so that would solve the problem. Somebody says, well, I need 8 parking spaces. Well, yeah, you've got a backyard, they can park there.
If it's a problem, we may want to address it, if it's not a problem.
If it's not a problem, it's not, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. If it's a problem saying, oh my God, yes, I need more parking spaces, and my property is only, it's like saying, I've got a 3-bedroom house, but I've got 9 people that want to live there. Well, you have a 3-bedroom house. Same thing, you have a house now that not only is a 3-bedroom, it is a 6 parking space house. If you want to rent it out.
And
people are
that's the
gonna need-
point, so that we don't, and that's the point, so that you don't have the feel, and I think this is critical. All of us sitting in here, most of us live in single-family homes, or we live in a duplex. Either way, it has the feel of a residence. It's not a commercial rental district. And I think that is where we're struggling with now on some of these properties. They're turning into commercial rentals, okay? And some of them are above board and upfront, and other ones are doing it uniquely without, the neighbors may know, but basically it's being done under. And I think that's what we're trying to legislate for. Now, I just want it to be clear on that, because it's not that I want to tell somebody how many cars they have to own. I really don't care. I just don't want people to have to every day contest with a situation that is non-residential next to them.
And I think the same thing happened with people having boats in their front yards. People had boats in their front yards.
Or commercial vehicles,
And the boats in
giant
the front
commercial
yard.
trucks,
I
and
had a neighbor, and one of my other friends had a neighbor. Boat was there for 9 years, never moved. It got to the point where they were storing furniture under it.
Commissioner Ross.
So, when you talked about the landlord requiring that the landlord have the appropriate number of spaces for the property they're renting, yeah, I think that we definitely, I don't know that it necessarily has to be in this ordinance, but it definitely should be part of the landlord. We have a landlord ordinance, and that would control. And when they do the landlord permit, then they need to specify those things. There's some very interesting stuff that the county is looking at on Airbnb, not Airbnb necessarily, but vacation rentals, on regulating, and my hope is to roll some of that type of regulation into the landlord permitting. So in that area, we can control, make sure that they register the car, or whoever's coming in and out of the property. And some of that regulation may dampen excessive use of the short-term rentals, but we have certain limitations on what we could do.
Yeah, and I know the legislature, just so everybody's aware, the legislature really came down on our ability to manage that situation. They've really tightened it to the point where unless you had legislation passed previously, you can't have any now. Okay, so it does become an issue.
So why don't we start chipping away at some of these things and get on, so that John can get on paper what we're looking, the parameters that we're looking to set?
Okay, do you want to use your own list? Do you want to use this list? How would you like to proceed?
Well, okay, so you have off-street parking surfaces should be developed prior to development of new swale parking. I'm not sure that I particularly like the way that's worded, but
I just want to thank everybody for staying so
concept-wise-
long. Sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Concept-wise, property owners should park their cars on their properties first. And then we can talk about, when that doesn't work.
Yeah, this
what we
is
do
summarized from the legislation. The legislation is much more laborious to read through, but it has if this, then this, if this, then this, and we can go through that.
So could we maybe get some consensus to see if everyone agrees that property owners should park their vehicles first on their property?
And I want to expand on that just for 1 second. There are 2 situations where this happens, and most of the situations on swale parking occurs when there's single driveways, or whether it's ribbon or any single driveway, or there's an old-fashioned one-car garage. And invariably, there's tandem parking, and that's when the swale gets to be used, even though there's room to put 2 next to each other. They're undeveloped. They didn't develop it that way. So we do have a lot of properties with single and then swale. And I think you have a similar situation at your property where it's single and swale. I just think we have to be cognizant moving forward what direction we take with that. Are we going to force them to widen their driveway before they use the swale if they don't have the swale development? Or are we just going to allow them to develop a parking space on the swale? I think that's what you're going to run into in those situations.
Well, but now we're talking about having a non-conforming, non-conforming use, which, as it deteriorates or some other condition that we may set at that time, we're not asking people to tear out what they have on their private property.
No, what I'm saying is if right now I only have a single driveway, I don't care what kind, and I have no developed swale parking, I think we should allow them to develop swale parking. Right. But I think we need to be careful, because if we say you have to have it on your property and it goes in front of P&Z, they may say, oh, no, you got to make a double wide one to do that. So we have to decide now ahead of time how we're going to handle that, is my point.
Yeah. And, I mean, I would say, like, if there's a scenario where you have one driveway, tandem parking, let's say it fits 2 cars, you have a child, they grow up, now it's just one extra vehicle that you need. You should be able to have the choice to develop that one parking space in the swale. To me, even if I'm still thinking about our goal of conserving green space, my green space is preserved by just developing that one parking space in the swale properly, so there's proper setback, so that it's safe and everything else, rather than building, let's say, a wider driveway that's now taking up a larger percentage of the property, taking away more green space, and all I needed was one extra car. If we want to discuss later down the road what type of material should be used for the swale, since it is city property, maybe think of materials that it's easier to give that back if ever, let's say you don't have the car anymore, or you have more cars and you actually have to put in a larger driveway, then that swale parking space would be gone. We can discuss that, but I think initially we should still allow a parking space to be in the swale, especially under a scenario like that. I would think that the property still looks nicer, still has more green space, and you're not having that person put in a much larger driveway taking away green space.
Commissioner Ross.
So when you start thinking about developing the swale, in the last month or 2, Griffin Boulevard, wide street, double, you have a sufficient lane for traffic, you have a nice wide median, we have extremely deep setbacks, so most of them are 30, 40, 50 feet from the property line. And for the very first time in 2 months ago, there was a permit for a swale development on Griffin Boulevard. Nowhere else on Griffin Boulevard is there a swale developed except for this one property. It's a 4-bedroom house maybe. Mostly who parks on that developed swale? The property owner's construction company trucks. They don't park there overnight. They park to get their instructions, whatever they are doing, I don't know. But the only cars that I've seen, the only vehicles I've seen parked in that swale are pickup trucks with construction equipment. And that's, I think, I can't believe that the permit was issued to allow that, although technically in the code it does. P&Z always has this out that they use about being harmonious with the surrounding properties. In no way is that harmonious with the surrounding properties. But because it's in the code, it was approved to the letter of the code. So we have to be really careful when we say, well, yeah, some circumstances we're going to let you develop the swale, because what will happen is people will take it to the extreme.
Okay, so we need to have a consensus, and just for the sake of time and length here, I want to just be clear. Do we want to make a, because at the end of the day, if you're going to stick it, it's going to be in front of P&Z, and they're going to be the ones that decide. That's what's going to really realistically happen here, if we're not very clear on each piece we want. So if we're going to leave it up to P&Z, then what you can do is you can use the harmonious surrounding properties as part of your thing, and then that they should develop swale parking when possible, and minimize green space, or minimize. We can put some language in there to that effect, so they maximize green space.
It gets a little subjective.
I know, that's what I'm saying, that's, and he's got to implement it, yeah. So, suggestion, Attorney Hearn, for that one piece.
Well, what do we?
Off-street parking is the first priority to development prior to swale parking, or for single spaces, it should be permitted on the swale without expanding, a single space allowed on the swale without expanding your driveway. That's the two things.
Could it be that a single space shall be allowed on the swale if they show a need?
Right, if you're only, if you want to discourage swale parking, you would require it on the property, and then they could use the special exception process. If
Right.
they couldn't get on the property. That's if you really are pushing not to have swale parking, that's the best way to do it. Because then you have full control, now you have to come in and say, well, why can't you have the cars there? But if you're not doing that, then you would go a different route. So
Okay.
that's why we've got to hear from the commission on that.
So at the end of the day, we're going to all take a poll, because I don't know how else to do this. And I'm going to tell you, I went back and forth both ways on this. And if you take away swale parking, or you limit swale parking, it does two things. Okay. I believe it should be overflow parking. I think that is what it was intended to be for. I do think that if you can manage it off-street, it will, and I believe that now after only driving around and looking at this for 3 weeks. I didn't have this opinion prior to this. But at the same time, I think if there's a need to develop swale parking, they should be allowed to do so with that same 40%, no more than 40% of materials that are impervious. And I think this way it kind of is a compromise between the two. It allows the people to say, hey, if you got ability to park on your property, you're going to develop that first. If you don't, by all means, or if or you need additional spacing, you can apply for it, but only after you've done your property first. I think that's the compromise. Should we take a poll, just to see?
I don't think that's a compromise. My position is property owners should park their vehicles on their property. Now, if we want to say in a special circumstance, but they'll have to show what that special circumstance is. And I think that only pervious materials should be used in the swale. I don't think that we should, if property owners want to put impervious on their property, if they, have other methods of drainage, great. But I don't think that any development in the swale should hinder percolation.
I understand what you're saying. The only problem I have with that is if you have concrete driveway and you put in a gravel driveway, it just looks terrible. And so I think there's an aesthetic piece.
Then maybe you shouldn't put it in, I think.
Okay.
To address the gravel that was discussed before.
Well, can we, go ahead, finish it. Then we need to, at this point, we're going to need to make some sort of movement, or we're going to have to postpone this item for later and come back to it.
So to express on the gravel, Commissioner Bilt was saying we allow people to gravel. I think that was sort of a concession for those older properties that have ribbon driveways in order to help them meet the road, that, they could still maintain their ribbon driveway, but we had that to meet the road.
Did we do that, or was it done so you can put the gravel driveway in to meet this section of the code. However, you only have a year and a half to do it or a year to do it. After that, it goes back to what it was before.
Something to consider now if you want,
Yeah.
but that was the reasoning.
Okay, I think there's a lot here. I just want a consensus. Do we want to move forward to go one by one, or do we want to come back and do this in a special setting?
So can we say that?
We're not going to get this done tonight, clearly.
If I could make a recommendation, you have here 10 items. Are these the only 10 items that you're all going to be looking at?
This is the 10 I prepared.
No, I
am
understand.
sure that they may have plenty on their own that they may want to consider that is different than what I have.
Because what I was going to recommend is to start with these 10 items on a yes or no, give that to our attorney, and then additional items, give them to him as well, so that then he can prepare something at a later point. See what do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
And it could be by email.
What we do is prepare something that's like the Ten Commandments. Very simple, easy to do.
One concept at a time.
This is not,
This is going to be a very nuanced, or it's going to be very hard to bring together. That's why we've been doing this for a long time. So I would first probably just, if you get the bigger concepts, because some of these are almost more detailed than we're going to.
they're too detailed.
Because we could put something together with code, and we probably will dislike at some level, but it may grab the big concept. I want the big concepts to be the ones that don't change, because that's, and so you're talking about the right big concept here, right? It's swale parking.
Right.
What are we going to do?
And when you do the big concepts, the other issue is you have non-conforming structures for the majority of the park. Not for some of the properties, for the majority of the
So
properties.
the way we did it in the previous ordinance was we had this 50% deterioration level, which is not the easiest thing to deal with, but it's something.
But you also have people that right now who either have swale parking completely, and you're not going to take that away from them as far as I'm concerned, because it's already there. And then you have situations where you have all swale parking, you have an enormous, if you look at what I did right, and I'm sure it's if this, then this, if this, then that, and at the end of the day, the premise was, if you have it, we're not taking it away. If you let it deteriorate to the end, then you have to go back to what the intent of the ordinance is, which is to provide off-street parking as much as possible.
Right, and I still think that's the intent of this commission, as I understand it.
Is that the intent of everybody's so far? the
Well, I
consensus?
was introducing a concept in the last go-around, is that not only 50% deteriorated, but when the property changes title, and the new property, buyer would be aware of it, when the property changes title, it would have to come into compliance with the new ordinance.
Does anybody concur with that? No.
Okay, what else? What can we agree on?
Wait, that's not a bad idea. But existing swale parking when the property changes title must be approved by staff.
Well, my concept was that at that time, if they required the special exception, then they'd go through that process, special exception process.
The problem I have is our staff, we have this can't be their only thing they're doing for the village. And at some point, we have to kind of bite the big one that we're an 80-year-old community, and we're not going to bring this into looking like, perfect driveways and no swale parking. And I think we have to bite the dust on this one. I'm looking at the village manager here thinking to myself, oh my God, what are they doing to me? So I don't want to make this unreasonable. Let's start with something simple. If you're doing new construction, or you have 50% of your, or 25% of your square footage, yes, you're going to have to put in a driveway, done, right? You're basically reconstructing a house, okay? 25% of square footage is huge. And or new construction, you got to put in a driveway. We're done. Secondly, that's one. Secondly, if you have existing structures that deteriorate, everybody agrees, you got to first develop your off-street parking, okay? That's it. If you have a need, based upon your configuration, to have off-street parking and additional parking on your swale, you will be allowed to do it. The nuance is how much, what materials, and how we're going to cope with that. That, I think, is the sticking point.
Can we do materials in a public works manual or something so we don't have to address them here as if things change over time?
Well,
You don't
we
want to
really
do
don't have a public works manual.
You don't want to.
Yeah, well, talk about chapter one.
So that'd be a whole nother meeting.
Can we agree on that those last parts? Do we agree on that?
You got the 25% new development.
Let me be clear. New construction or 25% change in square footage?
Everybody agrees to that?
Yes.
Driveways.
Okay. The second one more time, let's get the other.
The second one is, if you are going to ask for swale parking, okay, or you decide you want to apply for swale parking, either you're, and you don't have it at all, then you have to first try and keep it on off-street. See what you've developed on your off-street parking first, okay? If you need additional parking, and there's a reason for it, they're going to be doing this in front of planning and zoning anyway, right? And there's a reason for it. You can develop a portion of your swale. We can negotiate that. You can write it right now, and we'll fight over it later.
Rich, what the most straightforward thing there is, you don't have swale parking, you need to have a driveway, and if you're looking for swale parking, you got to go through the special exception process to show some proper why you don't.
You have to show a need. You have to, I don't want to do that. It's too restrictive.
That's where I want to be
Yeah.
clear, because if we put it as a special exception for it, then the scenario I just told you about, where I just have another car, and rather than putting in a full double driveway or whatever.
At a cost of
X, plus it's taking up more green space, do we want to say that to residents? There's a difference between a special exception of a resident, I think one of the residents she just left, who has a property that's very shallow, she really only has room for swale parking, that's one scenario. Then there's another scenario of allowing someone to develop one parking space in their swale if, just to accommodate one, whether it's a visitor parking space or they got one more car, and then it's not a slippery slope of a new large driveway that can accommodate way more cars, and then now we're going into the conversation of how many cars should be on your property, and so I don't want to label it as special exception, because I think it's two different
Okay,
things
how
we're talking
how about we do it, how about this, because this is a compromise, we have it already, is you can develop 40% of your swale with, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to leave it as we had it, you can either decide 40% of your swale, period, or 40% of your swale with impervious material, with impervious material, that allows basically you to develop your whole swale with rock. It does. It's the out. Okay? You decide
Then we
between
have
those
to-
two.
Then we can change.
Is not wrong. Permeable is.
If you decide 40% tied to impervious, you allow therefore pervious material to be on the entire swale.
Right, okay.
It's the inverse of that
Right.
is allowed, therefore, because it's
Right.
not, right?
Right.
So you could decide, everybody can decide now, do you want to allow full development of the swale with rock, yes or no?
No.
No.
Okay, so therefore, what we can do is you can develop, and this is most people, 40% of your swale, period, okay? That's it,
Okay.
that's it,
Do we need to put
done.
something in there, must meet
And including,
drainage requirements or whatever?
yes, and you can make it 50% if you use impervious. You can motivate them to use impervious. I don't know how you want to do that. Or you can require it to be impervious, but then it doesn't match the, I don't want to do that, because if you have a brick driveway and you put it in and they space it right, they put textile below it, it will drain. You can say that it's designed such that it maximizes drainage.
Max, how do you measure maximize?
I just like that you can develop 40%, if you're going to do it, just say develop 40% of your swale.
We'll be done with it.
For driveway.
Using the approved materials, whatever we decide is.
That's where you're
I
gonna
was
go.
going to say,
Are we saying for driveway or?
no, for the swale.
For the swale.
For the
Well,
swale.
that's what I meant, it's for parking. is what I
For
meant.
swale parking,
Yeah.
right.
Right,
swale.
and
Because
is,
that's separate than having your driveway,
Okay, last but not least, you want it including the approach or not including the approach?
not including the approach.
not in,
Yeah, not included.
Okay, got three right there.
No, no, no.
Okay, well, we got three consensus. We're going to go with consensus.
Okay?
I'm abstaining because both ways are right. Because I've seen it both ways. And 40% will allow you to have basically 10 feet of your driveway and another,
and a space.
and a space.
I think any impermeable material other than the approach is a bad thing for the swale.
Okay, well, we haven't discussed materials yet, so we haven't
Right.
gotten there yet.
But we already said pervious or M, right?
That was
I
for
would
the-
like-
That was for the parking space.
Well, I would like to, we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm figuring a compromise may be, rather than back and forth with this language of pervious, impervious, is for us to decide on
Okay,
materials.
brick is impervious, but looks lovely. Turf block is pervious. Concrete is pervious or impervious, depending. Asphalt can be, you're right, but most of it's impervious. What am I missing? Pavers?
If they're done in sand, they drain.
Okay, depending.
So does brick.
And brick can also be pervious. if
So we
it's
could,
done.
we could require geotextiles in a sand base.
Right.
We can require geotextiles in a sand base, which will take care of some of that. Okay? Going back and forth. And then, I still think it should match or be complementary to your driveway, because what I don't want to see is what I've seen all over the park, where somebody decides, hey, I need a driveway, I'm going to throw in some nice big rock, throw it out there, and it matches nothing.
No, I agree with you.
That can't happen anymore.
I think we should have a list of materials and have a list of materials that are impervious. And also say that it should be in kind or aesthetically or harmonious with your driveway. But we list, complementary, but we list out what.
Did you mean pervious, or did you mean with it?
Pervious materials.
For it to
For the
percolate?
swale to percolate. And we list out what those are, and if you do develop that 40% section of your swale for that one parking space, whatever material you choose from the list that we'll have should complement your driveway.
And you're saying that your property, that it would be pervious for the swale?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Swale is used for collection of rainwater, drainage.
Can live with that. Is there a consensus on that?
Yes.
All right, we're good. We're getting the big stuff. Okay.
I'm sorry. 40, you're allowed to develop up to 40%
That's 30 feet?
of a material that allows water to percolate.
Yes.
For a parking space.
That's 30 feet?
Anywhere in the park. So, I mean, we're not distinguishing whether it's 6th Avenue or 116th Street or Griffin.
You want to make an exclusion for Griffin, but they're not allowed to do it? I'm asking.
Well, I mean, first of all, 6th Avenue is a state road. I'm not sure that we're permitted to regulate what happens on the swale there.
If we can't, then we can't.
Right away. Is there a difference in the speed limit there?
On
Yes.
6th Ave?
6th Avenue,
On
yes.
Griffin? On Griffin, is there a?
30.
630, yeah. but
Griffin is 25, so is the rest of the park. And the state county does that.
For subjective way would be doing it based on speed.
Right.
Right.
Back to my original idea, changing the speed of the rest of the park to 20.
No, don't go, we're not tonight. No, stop.
That would solve
Yeah.
that
Stop.
problem.
Stop.
Well, I mean, at least it would protect 6th Avenue.
Yeah. That's right. And we don't have the right to control someone else's right away anyway.
Yeah.
So,
So it's going to be excluded.
So then it's excluded anyway, as a matter of
We don't have the
law.
right to,
and that the state would.
but then we also don't have the right to put it on Griffin, because Griffin is the county.
No, you look right.
So you can't put it on Griffin either.
So then,
We wouldn't,
Well, I don't know what the county
I don't know what the county would do.
would do. Yeah.
Can you look into that for us? And just let us know? Okay. Well, let's move on.
So
We
it
may?
puts it on the county, not on us.
Right. Setbacks for
So,
swales
I'm
should be-
sorry, just to make, I want to make sure that I understand the concept is that 40% development is not going to require any kind of special exception or proffer that it's needed. They're just going to be able to develop 40%.
The only other thing you can do is you can say that you must be able to develop a 2-car wide space if your property, I mean, that's the only thing, but then, once again, you're forcing people to develop more than they need to. And that's what you have to question. I don't make a decision, just make a vote on it, let's decide. And that's really, because
You
there's
must have
no
sufficient
win in
parking.
this.
You must have sufficient parking on your property for the number of vehicles that are normally resident. Is that reasonable?
Yes.
Well, yeah, you definitely proffer that. That's what a lot of cities would have, and then you could do a special exception process if the uniqueness of the property.
Okay, yes.
Yes,
right,
let's
okay,
do that.
that's- yeah.
Does that work?
Wait,
And I
aren't we
think we
saying you
just
need
went
to have a
back.
minimum? You
We
need
just
to
went
have a
back to
minimum
what
of
we were
2
discussing before.
and 1 visitor space.
We're not going to, I
But you
don't,
must have the sufficient number of cars that are normally resident on your property.
for off-street parking.
Yeah, off-street.
Right,
Let's say
which
you're
is an
required to have
R1.
3 spaces, however, you have 5 cars that are normally there because you have 5 people that all drive. You then must have 5 parking spaces on your property.
On your property.
On your property.
Then that
Except for
just
special estates.
took, then that just
Right.
took away
Right.
the swell parking, and we're back to it being a special exception.
Right.
Right. The special exception, and this may help or may not help, is the reason, a variance is much different, right? It can be a self-created hardship. So the special exception, there's special circumstances or conditions affecting the property, such as unusual size and or configuration of the lot. It makes the installation impractical. And the granting is not detrimental to the public welfare or injurious other adjacent
Okay.
property.
And none of that
As-
covers what,
Right.
So if it doesn't, then it's not what you want, but it's not as.
As a compromise,
strict.
why can't we at least allow one space? I mean, and just be
It's
done
up
with
to you.
this.
It's-
It's a 20-foot spot, it's 20 by 12, so that's 20 feet, and it's 12 feet, so it allows you 3 feet and plus 9, so you can get the car off the road.
But not including not including the apron or the
approach.
the approach. So
No.
now the approach is another 10 or 12 feet.
No, not if it's,
If it's a double wide parking surface,
if
then
it's
the
double wide,
approach
they
is
could only have,
A 10-foot car.
20 feet.
It says 20 and 10 is 30 feet, it's still 40%. If you do
Well,
the
wait.
one car, it's still 40%.
If they have a double wide driveway, so they have 20 feet of approach, now they're going to have another,
30 feet, no. No, so it has to include the approach. I see your point. That's reason, including the
Unle-
approach,
including the approach.
okay?
So 40% of swale pervious, including the approach, which does not have to be pervious, I assume, it's consistent with the driveway.
Fine.
right.
Okay.
So, are we, I'm still voting no on that, but thank you for the concession. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, consensus. Is there a consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And one no, okay. And
That's all right.
Will, is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Okay, yes, all right. We decided in terms of matching, it either matches or complements.
Yes.
Matches or complements. If not, in other words, if you have an impervious surface, it's going to have to be complementary. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right. We have the special exception, that's a given anyway, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the exceptions for special events and parties, you park wherever you want on your.
Correct. On
property.
parties, that, we all
Yeah.
agree that, we have to come up with something on that, John, but what I was proposing was that on national holidays, it's a freebie for national holidays. Any other time, basically, you have, if you need to have a giant party with, a ton of people, you got to go down to the city. And this will help with things like 150 people showing up for a pool party. And we'll be able to deal with towing and stuff like that, towing. And the first thing is you have to get everything on your property first. Anybody ever go to a Dolphin game many years ago in the Orange Bowl?
Yeah.
That's the idea. You got to hold it on your property first, okay? And then after that, it can go and overflow, but you have to go to the village for permits. So let's say, they have to find a place. I think we're running out of time, big time. We're going to have to continue this. Can we start there, guys?
Yeah.
Bring that back and see.
And then, right, and then we have to just,
Keep it simpler than you might expect, and then see how you move forward.
okay.
Work in progress.
Okay, so it is now getting very late. What time do we have?
Can we take 12C for that board member?
Yes. Board member application submitted by Martin SQ for planning and zoning or public arts. Is there an opening on planning and zoning?
I don't think so.
No. So public arts.
Is there
There is an
a,
opening on the public?
No, I think we have 5 members and 2 alternates currently on planning and zoning.
Right.
Right, so public,
Public art, I believe so. I have to double check.
I'll make a motion that we approve. I think there is.
public arts, there's
They
a,
have 5, I think.
Public art memo says 4.
In public arts, we have 4. In parks and parkways, we have 3. in I think those are the only ones that are not complete.
Okay, so he's asking
But he
planning and
asked
zoning,
for-
or, I make a motion, we appoint him to the Public Art Advisory.
Done. The landscape ordinance, do we want to tackle that, or the, I don't think so, correct? Okay, so.
We'll try to move, I think we should try to move it with the driveway, but too much tonight.
Too much tonight, and it's too late. Same thing with the compact, can we postpone that? Table it?
Sure.
Okay. And the only one was improving transparency with communication. I'm happy to put that out at the same time. And there was construction. What I'd like to do is just have a very brief discussion on construction moving forward to help with direction for the city manager, if we may do that and everything else. I know we're going to have a special meeting to do on the 17th. We can postpone everything else. How's that?
Workshop on the 17th.
The workshop, so we can't do that. So everything else will be tabled to the August meeting. Yes, Commissioner Ross.
I had a discussion, and no doubt you probably did also have a discussion with the manager about, we're getting a lot of complaints about these construction sites, and they need to be managed better, they need to have their fences up and all that. I think Christian and Code Elizabeth, I think that they are on top of that, but we definitely want to have the regs in before the situation arises. So we did back in January have some draft regulation that was proposed by the manager, and I recommended Christian take a look at it and see what we could use, what we could use out of that.
I know the Vice Mayor also provided some to us, so we can come back and look at that. I will share with you that I know that the village manager and I have probably been digging into this a lot. I will tell you that before we draft an ordinance, there are already a lot of laws out there that we may or may not know about because of the building official situation. There are already stuff out there that we may not need to put into an ordinance. In other words, there's already regs out there, we don't have to spend the money on it. However, there will be things specific to our village that we do have to then do, so I think we need to decipher those out before we construct it. So I would kind of like a consensus or more discussion on directing the city manager to do just that, to figure out what we need, what we don't need, and processes in place that he may be able to do as a policy matter versus an ordinance, so we can move on this much quicker.
I agree.
There are some things that could be moved as policy, but if you're going to attach consequences to them, I think that they'll have to be an ordinance. If there's a fine or if there's a consequence.
Right, but we may be able to piggyback on stuff that's already out there, that they're already required to comply to, and then use that as just setting the fine.
It's a county ordinance.
Correct. Correct. There's building code violation, there's a bunch of, we learned that the other day, that there's a lot of situations that we already have code for. So there's no need to write it if the county already has it written. We just have to impose the fine. Correct? Attorney? Hearn?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So do we have a consensus for now, without greater further discussion? I know you wanted to talk a little bit at all, no?
If it's being pushed to the next meeting, it's fine, or are we
I just want to,
discussing it?
well, I want to discuss it all, just major issues. We already know construction fences, managing their sites and keeping them clean and safe. I think those are things we all agree on, yes?
Yes.
I think also not having speeding cars and construction workers speeding throughout the park. I've had several complaints of certain construction companies doing that. And also, I think there was one more thing that I heard, and he's left, but I want to make that clear, is we should not be allowing delivery of materials and having people starting without having permits. So you shouldn't be able to open the gate up to drop off everything from dumpsters to building materials and all of that until their permits are displayed.
And just to point to, I pulled the Palmetto Bay Code of Ordinance, and I did like the idea of the whole management plan on how the site will be maintained, basically presented to the building department before any work starts, including, the permits being pulled and everything, so that can be signed off on by the village before anything even starts.
Out to the gate. And that would include the checklist and all of the things being submitted ahead of time. And basically a project management schedule type thing. Okay. So we agree, moving forward, that we will direct the city manager to do everything we just said?
And give up sleeping on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
In my spare time.
Yeah. But you'll begin to work on this. I know you already have begun to work on this because we've already discussed it, so I didn't want anybody to think that he hasn't been working on it. He's been diligently working on it. There's just a lot of areas to look at. Is that accurate? Okay. And thank you. So everything else, I want to make is there a motion to table 11C, 11D, 12A? I think that's it, yes? Continue to the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the correction, Commissioner Ross. Okay, make a motion second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Village Attorney?
Yes.
You want to talk about foreclosure?
I have two things. The manager has had a chance to meet with me, so we would be ready probably in 2 weeks to have an executive session. We could do it a special night, which we can reach out to you later or not, depends, or we could do it before the next regular scheduled meeting if that works for you as well. So it's a week later, so we're only 3 weeks, I think, away from the August meeting as it is. So we could do it at 6 o'clock before the August regular scheduled meeting. And remember, that's completely what we call in the dark. You know, that's it's an exemption to the sunshine law. We will meet, we can only talk about the collective bargaining issues. But what we do is the manager probably have a memo to look at some of the effects of what's been offered and what the manager would like to counteroffer with then your direction before we do it.
And that will be before the August meeting?
Yeah, it's at 6 o'clock.
August 1st.
August 1st, right, so it's 3 weeks from today.
Okay.
And then secondly, I spoke with the manager. Many of you may be aware of it. I know it's apparently been an eyesore for a while, but the first violation on this property was in 2012, and the property is 826 Northeast 121st Street. There's a lien there that's continuing to accrue. It's not homesteaded. There's been no compliance. The lien is at a point where it's over $17,000 at this point, where we could look at filing to either get the property, or what most likely will happen, there's a mortgage, I believe, still on it. I doubt it's been, it's from 2002, I doubt it's been satisfied. What normally might happen is then becomes a default and the mortgage company jumps in, which at least brings the bank into the situation, which they have responsibility. We actually boarded this place up for health safety reasons a few years ago. We've not done it again.
Village Attorney, you need to speak into the mic because he's not getting the, it's okay.
Sorry.
Your mic's not on.
It's not on?
No.
Okay.
It just gave up, I guess. There we go. Sorry about that. What I would suggest, if the commission has a will to do it, would be to authorize me to go ahead and file the foreclosure action. Before I would do that, I would call the bank and let them know I've been authorized to do that. We're prepared to move forward, hoping that the bank frankly does it. If there wasn't a mortgage company, then that might be a different story, because we would definitely get the property, and it would probably have more value than certainly the cost of doing a foreclosure action. Cost of doing a foreclosure action would be a few $1,000s if it wasn't disputed, and usually what you do is you get a summary judgment on it. If it's disputed and becomes a trial issue, we would relook at moving forward. But I think the main goal is to get the bank involved, a responsible entity that we can go ahead and hopefully have these violations cured, and the property, I've candidly not seen it, but is rather, yeah. There's another way to go possibly to do this, but would be an unsafe structure issue, but it does take a very long time. We really, in between building officials, and we'd have to go through the county unsafe structures. That takes a very long time. This is probably as cheap a way you can do it, and even if the mortgage, it's not a bank and lending company, doesn't jump in, there appears to be, just based on Biscayne Park itself, the value would far exceed the issue. So we could probably sell that and move forward. So it's up to the commission. I did send you all a memo on Friday on it. If you want to think about it more, of course you can, but if you feel comfortable enough, we can.
Is there
I would need a motion.
is there a motion to move forward?
I'm very reluctant to open up litigation without really having a budget or a game plan. I'd be very surprised if they have that, if that mortgage is current.
I would too, but what happens is many banks, and this is a lending company, I do not know, this is not a familiar lending company, they don't want to move forward.
Right.
And so in other cities, we have done it because it forces them to move forward. They'd rather not deal with your lien, hold back, and move forward when they're ready. So that's a very viable option. If nothing else, I can call them and try to get them to move and say that that the next meeting of the commission, it will be in front of them to go ahead and authorize whether or not you do. I'm just trying to get them to move forward.
So when you, I saw the memo where the code violations are currently like $17,000. That seems, I've seen so many code cases where they've gone into the 40,000s and 60,000s. It seems really low for this property that's been empty since 2008.
Yeah, you're right. Well, 2008, it may have been empty. December of 2012 was the violation, and it's at $25 a day, I guess. So.
Well, there are more things that could be cited on the property.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are.
There are, and there's also expenses from Public Works going out there to board up the building repeatedly and that sort of thing as well. And I'm not sure that's been leaned yet. I'll have to double check
Yeah, I
that.
think there's additional liens on the property from, is it North Miami and Miami-Dade County has liens on the property as well?
Well, North Miami might have water. You said, I just have this is what was provided to me by the village, so it's $17,515 in gross.
Let us research this and get an actual number.
Yeah,
And make sure that.
John, I'd also like to know, because of the fact that in this instance, we're going to be the junior lien holder.
Yeah.
And we have a senior mortgage, and if we were to foreclose and take the property, we would be responsible for the senior lien. So it's like I would like to know what the senior lien even is, because if we can motivate the bank to just move forward and do the foreclosure and obviously wipe out junior liens, I don't like being in the, and trust me, I would like to see this done because I would like precedent set in the village, but not to our detriment.
Right.
And if it's a very large senior lien that's in front of us and we take the property, then we're responsible for that senior lien.
Right, we have to call the bank, the lending company, whatever. In 2002, it was $183,000. So I don't know what it would be now. I am sure, just finding out from Commissioner Ross, that it's been vacant since 2008, there hasn't been any payment.
At least. I just because I remember campaigning there and it was derelict back then.
But the rules and regulations.
It's before then. It's actually before
They
then.
pay taxes on it, or they issue tax certificates there?
Well, I haven't seen, there's no tax deed that I saw, but we would look at, we reach out to the mortgage company. The rules are for mortgage companies and lenders that once a junior lien holder comes in, they have to jump on the foreclosure of it. But why don't I get the authority to go talk to the lender and tell them that that's what we're considering doing and moving forward if they don't handle something in the next 30, 40 days.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Village clerk?
The announcements are on Wednesday, July 12th, we have the Public Arts Advisory. You know what, I take that back, I apologize. They will not be meeting on July 12th. July 17th, Monday, the Planning and Zoning Board will be meeting at 6:30. On Thursday, July 20th, the Parks and Parkway Advisory Board will be meeting. They normally meet on the Wednesday, but now they've changed it to the Thursday for that particular meeting. In addition to that, we're looking to our workshop, which will be either on Monday, the 17th, or Wednesday, the 19th. And like I said previously, I will confirm those dates and get back to all of you. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is Tuesday, August 1st at 7 p.m.
I want to thank all the audience particularly, and as well as everybody sitting up here for this incredibly long meeting. Thank you all so very much. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second? Motion adjourned. Everybody, all in favor? Motion-
you, guys.
Meeting adjourned.